of Detroit, Michigan chapter. All right. K.W. Toulis, Los Angeles. All right, Reverend Toulis is on our panel this afternoon. And then Reverend Tacoy Porter of our Sacramento, California chapter. Reverend Porter. He's running for city council, but we're nonpartisan, so I did not bring that up. And many of our chapter leaders, we go all day in our workshops. Keepers of the Dream. This evening is our dinner tonight. Keepers of the Dream. Byron Stevenson, who created the Legacy Museum, the Byron Lynch Museum down in Montgomery. He will be here. Legacy Museum, the Lynch Museum. Brian Flores, the coach who sued. He will be here when he was fired. Brian Flores, the coach who sued. He will be here when he was fired. He represents this sister from Louisiana who has stood up in the middle of this Ukraine crisis. She will be with us tonight. Linda Thomas Greenfield. And our honoree of Yolanda Adams, Legion Entertainment. Yolanda Adams will be with us. So you all have the program books you see of you every day. Many of our so you all have the program books you see of you every day. This is not rally. This is about we have coming out of here with President Biden's cabinet members and from legislation. And we want to hear from everybody. Change. We want to ask substance. This is not. We do not need performance activism. We need change, transformative activism. We do not. That's what we're going to need. Performance activism. We need change 3 or 4 days. Transformative activism. And that's what we're going to be about these next 3 or 4 days. So if you came to event, you had the wrong convention. If you came to just, you had the wrong convention. See somebody with big names, you had the wrong convention. But if you want to really hear what people are saying, and you're going to be committed, then you have the right intelligent dialogue and say, we coming out of here. That's why we called it national, and you're going to be committed, then you have the right convention. Network. That's why President Obama spoke national. Said it's not the National Procrastination Network. When President Obama spoke, he said it's not the National Procrastination Network. For sure. One of the things, though, that we do this for is that we fight for people. That need to be fought for. You know when a police person You know when kill somebody, a police person, or even wound somebody, they have a union that steps in. They provide what they need. Lawyers, resources. If there's trauma, that is what they have, an institution to support the police. But the victims don't have that. So what National Action Network has become is an institution to back the victims, because only an institution can face off an institution. And that's why we have many of the victims we fought for with us today. Let me bring up to sit with us the brother and sister-in-law of the one in the case that rocked this world, Philonise Floyd, the brother of George Floyd. Y'all come up, Philonise. That's Philonise and his wife. Y'all sit over here up. This is about y'all. Many of you, give him a hand. And we have also, many of you heard about the case I got to tell you this stuff on Philonise. He's going to get mad, but I'm going to do it anyway. When they called me and asked me would I come and do whatever we could do to rally in Minneapolis, and I flew to Minneapolis, and Philonis and his wife and his siblings came in from Houston because none of them lived in Minneapolis. And for the 2 or 3 days leading up to the funeral, Philonis kept complaining about he didn't like the food in Minneapolis. And one of the things is I kind of get tight with the families. So we getting ready to go, and his wife tell you I ain't lying, we getting ready to go to the funeral. And Ben Crump came in, who'll be with us this morning. Ben Crump came in and said, wait a minute, President Obama's on the phone, want to talk to y'all. So we got President Obama on the phone, and he said what he had to say, and I repeated what we were there for. And President Obama said, after talking about 5 or 6 minutes, he said, is there anything I could do for y'all? And Philonis said, yeah, could you send us some soul food out here? You have met our honoree. I've talked about, rather, our honorees tonight, and you've met our vice chair of the board, but we're honoring one of our board members who's getting the corporate award tonight. Is she here? Camille Joseph Goldman. Camille's here. One of the things that is important is that we have people in the corporate world that don't get amnesia on the way downtown and forget that they're here because of groups like this. If we had not marched and done what was necessary, we would never have been able to see people rise to where they are. Glad to see Bishop Jordan just walked in. Bishop. Glad to have you with us. I want to get ready to do our ribbon cutting. Glad our media panel on Friday, is it Friday? Thursday, hold 1 minute. Yeah, that's right. Thursday, Rachel Nordlinger, who y'all know is the best media person in the country, she got her hair flipped to the other side this year. Last year it was this side. You can always tell how the network's doing by which side she flips her hair. I want some of our, come out here a minute, Ebony Riley, who's our Vice President of Strategic Planning. Dominique Sharpton, who is our head of membership. Damon Byam, who's been with us since we started. Reverend Stephen Marshall. I want some of our youth huddle. Where's some of the young folk? All right, y'all are going to be part of the, I want them part of the ribbon cutting. Where? I want to bring on to help us cut the ribbon. When we started National Action Network in 1991, 31 years ago, our lawyer, Michael Hardy, said that we need several people to sign to make it legal. A black cop signed to help us become legal. And that black cop stood with us on issues. We stood with him, Form 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement. We fought about how you going to deal with policing. He's dealing now with broken windows. I'm saying it's a broken trust. We got to deal with the broken trust in the community that don't trust the cops, and at the same time need the cops to deal with a broken community where 12-year-old kids can be killed. And that black cop that signed them papers 31 years ago is now the mayor of the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams. Now I'm going to have Eric help us to cut the ribbon. I want to acknowledge in the audience as long as we've had a network, long before many in the civil rights community embraced us, there was one that was always on our side, and she's been a real champion, a shero. She just turned 90 years old, and talking about she gonna retire, but she can beat me walking and riding, and that is the New York State president of the NAACP, Hazel Dukes. Stand up, Hazel. We love you, Hazel. Now, before the mayor and I go down and join the young folks to cut the ribbon, and then he's going to speak, and then we're going to go forward. When I was 12 years old, I was a boy preaching the Church of God in Christ. And Bishop Jordan, my mother got concerned because I was watching a lot of news. My father left. We had moved to Brownsville. And I just had this activism thing. I wanted to see Adam Clayton Powell. I'd slip out to go to rallies. And she brought me to Bishop Washington and said, I don't want him to lead the church, but he's in all this stuff, reading all these things. And Bishop Washington said, I know what to do. And he brought me and my mother to Reverend William Jones and Jesse Jackson. And they said, no, he can stay in the church and do activism. And they made me youth director of the chapter of Operation Breadbasket in New York in 1968. I was 13. Dr. King was killed about 3 months later. I'd seen Dr. King come and speak at Washington Temple for a Freedom Riders rally, and I'd seen him one other time. But since that day, 12 years old, until now, I've had one consistent hero and mentor. And a mentor is not one that's just there with you in good times, but there in bad times. And a mentor is not one that tell you you're right when you're wrong. Mentor, if you've never argued and fought with your mentor, you never had one. And I've had one for 54 years that surprised me and said, I want to be at the convention. He said, I don't want to do anything. But I wanted him to be here. I remember he did something, and I came down, and he was staying across the street. They call it the City Squire. And at that time, I don't know what they call it now. And me and my gang, after he left, we stayed 3 or 4 days just running up the hotel bill. That's why I be checking all y'all's hotel bills now. And they said, this boy done hustle up the hotel. And he said, yeah, but he gonna be somebody. Well, I'm glad he's here to see National Action Network, and that boy he believed in grew to be somebody. My mentor, Reverend Jesse Lewis Jackson. Keep him standing. I want him to help cut the ribbon. We're going to come down and cut the ribbon with the mayor. Come on. just move over one. All right, let us settle. Let us hear. Are we ready, Ebony? Shh, with the video. Let me say this. As we get ready to hear from the mayor, let me say that I had another breakthrough in my life, Mr. Mayor. There was a lady named Paula Walker who worked at NBC. And she said to me, you know, Reverend Al, you ought to try to do a TV show like your mentor, Reverend Jackson, used to do a show on CNN. She set up a meeting with me and the president, and we tried to pitch this, and he didn't like the idea. He called me and said, look, I got a guy going out on vacation. Let me see how you like it. I did the show 2 or 3 nights. Then he said the next week, the guy at 6 o'clock is going out. Let's try that. I tried that. About that Wednesday, he called me. He said, come to my office. I came to his office. He said, how you like it? I said, fine. He said, I don't like to repeat what's been done. I know what your mentor did at CNN. He said, how would you like to do what you're doing now 5 nights a week? I said, what? He said, yeah. I said, when do I start? He said, you started. And they negotiated the contract while I was on the air. And now, it's August, I've been on, now I'm on weekends 2 nights a week. I'm on 11 years. And this man took all kind of attacks and criticism, but he believed. And when I wanted to do the show from Selma, he walked with us in Selma. And he retired, resigned, he's never gonna retire, from being president of MSNBC last year. And he is succeeded by a black woman who'll be at the dinner tonight. But he is now a member of the board of the National Action Network. The former president of MSNBC, Phil Griffin, stand up. He always told me, I want to be on the board. I said, you serious? He said, well, you see, he's here, he's on the board. All right, let us hear from the mayor of the city of New York, Mayor Eric Adams.
I was sitting down at the table, and just a longtime good friend, Jennifer Jones Austin, she stated that, let me pour you some water. And I reflected, Jennifer, one time I was in a restaurant, and there was a family sitting down eating, and a mother had 2 children, and she poured soda into the glass of her children. And a few tables over, there was a family sitting there, and the mom and dad, they poured water into the glass of their children. And I said to myself as I reflected on that moment, what are we pouring into each other? What are we pouring? Are we pouring a high, sugary substance in an emotional way that is causing us to have emotional obesity where we don't enjoy the beauty of our lives? Are we pouring water, something pure, something precious that can clean our organs and give us the life-sustaining force that we need? This organization from the 90s has poured into us. It didn't matter if it was on the airwaves. It didn't matter if it was walking down the block painting crack houses. It didn't matter if we were in the back of the car driving through the state, running for Senate. It didn't matter what the issue was, and people try to localize you to one location and don't really see the full scope of your existence. Just as vociferous and dogmatic this organization has been to stop police abuse. It has been to stop seeing bullets carve highways of death, taking young, innocent black and brown people in our city. It's the consistency that I enjoy about NAN. It's the consistency, because black lives can't matter when Floyd is murdered, but it does not matter when a 12-year-old baby named Cade is taken from us and watch his family devastated. I never knocked on a door and told a parent their child is not coming home and they felt differently based on who took their lives away from them. That doesn't exist. NAN is consistent. Signing those corporation papers was so easy to do because I was around a person and an organization that poured into me what the possibilities were. And so when you hear people throughout the city that just don't get it, attempt to demonize what we are attempting to do, that's not an attack on Eric, that's an attack on NAN, because I am NAN. I am NAN. I'm the person in the early 80s that was the security for Jesse Jackson when he decided to run for president of the United States, moving around this city with him, going off duty with members of the organization saying, we're not going to lose another King. We're not going to lose another Malcolm. We're not going to lose another Medgar Evers. We're not going to lose another leader in our community. We decided to wrap a security around him. I'm the person that decided, let's bring the people together in law enforcement to protect Sharpton and those two beautiful daughters of his right now, to make sure when they threaten his life, we can be there. You don't spend 35 years of your life for something and abandon it merely because you reached the point of being the mayor. You bring who you are into the position so that you can get it right. That's what NAN is about. NAN is grooming leaders. NAN is saying that don't stand on the outside pressing your face up against the window watching other people sit down at the table of power and talking about what it is. You didn't march just to march. You marched to march inside so you could have the power that you need. That's what NAN is about. And so I cannot thank my mentor and friend, Reverend Sharpton. You know, there's a saying people talk about when they look over the beach and look at the footprints in the sand. And the question was asked, Jesus, why all the difficult times there's only one set of footprints in the sand? And Jesus said, because during those times I carried you. And it was during my life of those dark moments that I felt as though, why was there only one set of footprints in the sand? But when I reflect back on it, when I reflect on the time when the police department wanted to fire me and I felt as though there was one set of footprints, they were Reverend Sharpton's carrying me. When I felt I wanted to be state senator and no one wanted to be with me and support me, it was Reverend Sharpton carrying me. When I felt that all of those messages were coming outside, people who were writing and attacking me, saying why I shouldn't be mayor, and then want to pick my staff on who should be in my team. And people will come and say, stand up, brother. Stand up and be who you are. Because I've been there already and I'm going to be there for you. It was Reverend Sharpton carrying me. And so let me tell you, brother, I'm mayor because you carried me. I'm mayor because you supported me. I'm mayor because you never abandoned me. I may have signed the documents then, but you carried me ever since then. And I'll never forget it. Never forget what you have done and how you have been a mentor and a friend. Thank you, NAN. You have a mission. We have just begun, and we're not stopping until we finish this job well. Thank you.
Eric Adams. Let me say this, at the mayor's got to go and run the city, but I must say this. As long as I don't come to City Hall and run your city, don't come to my convention and preach. You are not a preacher. You the mayor. Take him back down to City Hall. Let him do his job. See, did he preach this morning? Mayor Eric Adams. I also want to recognize the chair of the MTA came this morning. Where is he at? James Lieber? Okay, thank you for being here. Thank you. As we prepare to hear from the chair of the DNC, let me go to the video, and we have a greeting that I want to play.
Good morning. As Speaker of the House, it is my privilege to bring greetings from the Congress to the National Action Network as you gather for your annual convention. For 3 decades, NAN has been an essential voice for racial and social justice. Thanks to the bold vision of Reverend Sharpton, this network is paving the path to a brighter future for all Americans. Let us also salute the leadership of NAN's board chairman, Reverend W. Franklin Richardson, and Senior Vice President Ebony Riley. Thank you to all those gathered here today for devoting your time, energy, and talents to defending Americans' civil rights. Democrats are proud to march alongside you, united by President Biden's visionary leadership and unwavering commitment to justice. Together, we are fighting to protect our most fundamental freedoms, including the sacred right to vote. Earlier this year, the Democratic House proudly passed the Freedom to Vote John R. Lewis Act to stop partisan gerrymandering, empower grassroots donors and activists, curb the power of special interest money, and bring an end to voter suppression and election subversion. As we defend our democracy, we also continue the fight against systemic racism in our criminal justice system. Last year, the Democratic House again passed the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, landmark legislation to combat police violence and save lives. Just last week, the House passed the MORE Act, which will expunge federal cannabis convictions and deliver justice for those harmed by our broken drug laws. President Biden has also put environmental justice at the heart of our agenda. Under his leadership, Democrats are fighting to rectify the inequities still plaguing communities of color. Our bipartisan infrastructure law delivered historic investments to get the lead out of our children's drinking water, clean up dangerous legacy pollution, and reconnect communities divided by infrastructure projects of the past. Congressional Democrats will continue fighting for long overdue progress. But as Abraham Lincoln once said, public sentiment is everything. With it, nothing can fail. Without it, nothing can succeed. We can only accomplish so much through inside maneuvering. We also need your outside advocacy and mobilization. And that's why we're so grateful to Reverend Al Sharpton for his relentless insistence on mobilization. As you know, this week Americans marked 54 years since the tragic assassination of Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. Dr. King's memorial, beautiful memorial in Washington, is engraved with these words: "Out of a mountain of despair, a stone of hope." Amid so many challenges and faced with so many injustices, the activists, organizers, and leaders of NAN give America reason to hope. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton. Thank you all for inspiring so many in the fight for a fairer future, from marching in the streets to speaking out in the halls of power. House Democrats will continue serving you as your partners as we work together to build a better America. Best wishes for an inspiring and productive convention. Thank you.
Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, some of our congressional delegation will be in after they secure the vote. I think Friday they'll be in because they have to secure the vote in the Senate for the new justice on the Supreme Court. It is my honor now to bring to you the chairman of the Democratic National Committee, Jamie Harrison.
Good morning. Good morning, Rev. Hello, folks. It is indeed an honor to be back with each and every one of you, and I'm so glad to join you all in person this morning. Reverend L. Sharpton, thank you, my friend. Thank you for always speaking truth to power. Thank you for bringing us together today. Thank you for the ways that you have mentored so many in this room, including myself. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for your advice, your guidance, and your support during my run for the United States Senate. I will be forever grateful for you. Thank you, Reverend. I also want to thank Reverend Dr. Franklin Richardson, the chairman of the board, Ebony Riley, NAN's Senior Vice President of Policy and Strategic Partnerships, all of our chapter leaders and members that are here today, but a special shout out to some of my home folks in the South Carolina chapter, the Honorable Reverend Nelson Rivers, and Trudy Grant as well. Thank you all for the support, the unwavering support that you have given many of us over the years. And I want to thank all of you. Thank you for continuing to be on the front lines of the fight for justice and for democracy in this great nation. You know, the folks in this room, you all make up the backbone of this nation, not of the Democratic Party or the Republican Party, but of the nation. I know I speak on behalf of the President and the Vice President when I say how grateful we all are for the work that you do each and every day to protect our sacred democracy. So thank you. To Governor Hochul, Mayor Adams, I want to thank them for hosting us this week in New York. To our distinguished cabinet secretaries and members of Congress that will be here, thank them for being here this week. My friends, I stand on the shoulders of those that came before me, and many of you are in this room right now. Reverend Jackson in particular. Reverend Jackson, I want to congratulate you for this well-deserved recognition that you are getting from NAN. Folks, I remember I was born in 1976. I was raised by my grandparents. Yeah, I know. But I remember watching one of my first political memories was watching the 1988 Democratic Convention. And I was watching that speech with my grandfather. Because in my house, you had to watch whatever my grandfather was watching. But when Reverend Jackson, a son of South Carolina, got on that stage, and he told young people all across the country to never stop dreaming. Folks, I felt like the Rev was talking directly to me. You know, nobody in my family or my community talked to me about running for office or running or getting involved in politics or running the Democratic Party. But in my family, partly we didn't have those discussions because we were too busy talking about whether we could afford to keep the water running. But Reverend Jackson, you helped convince me that it wouldn't always be that way. You helped to convince me that I could afford to dream. My grandparents are why my dreams became reality. Folks, we didn't have much, but they made sure that I was taken care of. Despite their strength, they bore the scars of injustice. And I remember the stories that they told me. I remember one story my grandmother told me about her as a little girl, hiding with her family as the KKK marched down the street. I remember the story my grandfather told me because I was a part of it and I experienced it. I remember the day my grandfather died, and he carried the pain of being conned out of our family's home by somebody called a mortgage broker. You know, in the words of Langston Hughes, America was never fully America for them. But they knew what America could be. They knew what America should be, what with our collective effort America will be. Because, my friends, justice requires work. Not just the work of heroes, the work of everyday people. The work of everyday folks has carried us this far. Now, we talk now about folks like Dr. King or Constance Baker Motley or my mentor, Congressman Lewis, and we treat them like these mythical figures. But folks, they really were just everyday young people who were ready for change. John Lewis was 25 when he crossed the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Constance Baker Motley was 29 when she wrote the original complaint in Brown versus Board of Education. Dr. King was 34 when he had his dream. And as hard as they worked, as much as they sacrificed, change didn't come overnight. The 1964 Civil Rights Act was the product of decades of advocacy and multiple failed attempts. Federal judges were ordering schools to integrate as recently as 2016. Lynching was not a federal hate crime until last week. Folks, we are still fighting for the sacred right to vote. We are still fighting for that right. So our victories have been hard won, and we've bled and we've sacrificed our lives for progress, to make America be America for more people, to make sure that America is truly a more perfect union. Yet there are those who want us to go back to the days when America only worked for a powerful few, who are willfully blind or maliciously indifferent to the fact that America is a promise that has never been fully kept, who are desperately trying to define America greatness as something lost in the past instead of something that we continue to strive for. Rev, apparently I was on Morning Joe this morning, and I gave our Republican friends the vapors. Well, Rev, I'm sending them a warning sign now. Grab the smelling salts, because I'm about to go in. Senator Mike Braun, a sitting Republican from Indiana, said that the Supreme Court should make interracial marriage a states' rights issue again. I thought states' rights was dead, Rev, but apparently with these Republicans, they aren't. Rick Scott wants to raise taxes on half of Americans, and he thinks inflation is a political gold mine for Republicans. Same man who defrauded Medicare and Medicaid. Ron Johnson, he wants to take away our health care. In the midst of a pandemic, he wants to take away our health care. Greg Abbott, he is so pathetic that he wants to force LGBTQ kids back into the shadows. Kevin McCarthy, talk about weakness. This man is feckless. He happily oversees a caucus and bends to the will of members who attend white nationalist conferences and apparently who like to talk about cocaine parties and orgies, because he thinks that's a ticket to the speaker's gavel. Republican legislatures all over this country, my friends, are bending over backwards to bring Jim Crow back, to keep us from voting. But folks, we've seen this movie before, and we want our money back. These folks are leading an organized effort to drag us back, to unwind the progress so many gave so much to gain. The Republican Party has become a party of fear, a party of fraud, a party of fascism. But as much as they devolve, as low as they sink, as far into the past as they try to reach back to, this is what they need to know: we won't go back. You know, those folks on the Eben Pettus Bridge and in Memphis and Louisville and at Stonewall and at the Delano Grape Fields and in so many corners of this country, they work too hard. They sacrifice too much for us to go back. So no matter the issue, no matter the odds, we got to keep pushing forward, friends. The Democratic Party will keep pushing forward with the leadership of President Biden and Vice President Harris. We're going to keep fighting to help America live up to its original promise. So you're going to hear from members of the President's Cabinet here this week on everything from maternal health to housing to civil rights enforcement. They're going to tell you the ways that this administration is using the full force of the federal government to push the United States forward. This president and Democrats have a record that they have delivered on, promises that they kept, and promises we are still working to fulfill. We've led a historic economic recovery and presided over record job growth. Folks, nearly 8 million jobs created in 14 months. We produced the fastest drop in the unemployment rate in record history. We provided billions of dollars in investment and support for historically black colleges and universities. Some schools have got more money than they have in their annual budget all year long. We have kept people safe from eviction. We got people vaccinated. And folks, we're just getting started. The DNC is going to make sure that our work reaches communities across this nation. We are already advertising on black radio and in newspapers, and we aren't going to let up. We are already engaging young people on social media. We're launching programs to engage all the diverse communities that make our party strong. Our values, our voice, our vote. That is going to mobilize us in the black community. Our Seat at the Table initiative will uplift black women, and our Chop It Up will highlight the importance of black men to our party. We're not taking anyone for granted. We're going to work to earn every vote. And when folks head to the polls, our voter protection team, the largest in DNC history, will be on the ground fighting tooth and nail to make sure that every vote is counted. We're going to keep pushing this nation, my friends, to live up to that founding promise. We're going to make America be America for more people. We're going to show young people all across this nation how big they can actually dream. The Republicans, they can try all they want to resurrect America's darker days. But folks, we won't go back. They can try to take away our vote, but we won't go back. They can try to tell us our voice doesn't matter, but we won't go back. They can try to overwhelm us with waiting games and negative peace and the appalling silence of good people, but we won't go back. A cynical few can try to drag a brilliant, experienced, qualified judge down. They try to drag her down in ways that are all too familiar to black folks. But guess what? We won't go back. Lindsey Graham, Tom Cotton, Ted Cruz, they can try to distort her record. Marsha Blackburn can try to drag her down in the mud. Marsha, you want the definition of woman? Webster's have it for you. Dark money groups can use every trick in the book. But as my grandma says, they will try to call her everything but a child of God. But guess what? We won't go back. We will keep raising our voice in support. We will keep calling out the hypocrisy. We will keep highlighting her unparalleled brilliance and grace. And we will do so until they have got to call her Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. So call her everything you want. Call her everything you want, Republicans. But by the end of the week, you will be calling her Madam Justice. And until every black girl in this country sees themselves on the highest court in the land, the court where opinions like Dred Scott and Plessy and Korematsu told so many like them that they deserve less, we will finally show them that they deserve everything and more. And that's what I mean when I say about keep pushing forward, folks. That's why we have to do it. That's the type of progress the Democratic Party will keep fighting for, at least under my chairmanship. Because change just doesn't happen. We make it happen. We make it happen when we keep pushing forward, when we create the conditions that make change inevitable. That's how we restore justice and true democracy. That is the story of our nation, and it is still true today. So as chair of the DNC, I guarantee this: the Democratic Party will stay in this fight. We will keep moving forward. And as a black man, the son of a single mother, as a grandson of a day laborer and a domestic worker from the South, as a husband of a black woman, my modern day Renaissance woman, who is an artist, who is a scholar, who is an author. She got a degree from Harvard and one from Yale. As a father of 2 black boys growing up in South Carolina today, I will keep pushing forward. Folks, I just don't want my boys to know South Carolina is the first in the Union to succeed, or the home of Strom Thurmond, or a state where the Confederate flag flew until 2015. I want them to know it as a place where they can get a good education, where the nearest hospital isn't hours away, where the color of their skin won't put them in danger. I want them to know that it is a place where they matter. It is a place where they count. It is a place where they will be heard. But last but not least, I want them to know that their dad, excuse me, Revs, fought like hell to make sure that South Carolina and every corner of this nation is a place where their voice matters. That he learned from a generation that marched and sat in and walked out, and that he answered the challenges of the past, and that he stood arm in arm with the next generation of freedom fighters, and we kept pushing forward. I want them to know that even where our history has been darkest, especially where it has been darkest, that our stars shone the brightest, and that change does actually come. Not by accident, my friends, because we know faith without works is dead, but because we make it happen. My friends, we matter, we count, and we will be heard. So let's keep pushing forward, NAN. Thank you all for having me here today. Thank you for standing up. In South Carolina, we say, while we breathe, we hope. But as we go to November, Rev, the mission is not while we breathe, we hope. While we breathe, we vote, because that is how we bring hope back to this great nation.
Jamie Harrison, chair of the DNC. You know, Bishop Taylor, I come out Kojic, something about the anointing thing, everybody get up here and start the preaching. You notice that? Let me welcome, we have, y'all can't sit her out there, one of my real sisters and one of my real friends of this organization. We gotta recognize Sabrina Fulton, mother of Trayvon Martin. Stand up, Sabrina. And of course, the mother who's there with us from day one and never ever stopped. And that is the mother of Eric Garner, Gwen Carr. I have to acknowledge as our panel, y'all can seat the panel. I introduce them after you see them. I'll introduce them after you see them. Thank you. I have to acknowledge, though, before I introduce the first panel, we're going to get into our political panel. And each panel is an hour. Now, we're going to open to the floor after asking several questions. Let me just say this, because our convention, we also want people to be able to come and say and ask a question. You're not on the panel. You're asking a question. So don't get the mic and do a 5-minute run-up to your question. That's why I'm chairing the first panel, because you know I don't mind cutting you off, because that's what we do. All right. Now, I must acknowledge, and I am honored to have with us a sister beloved who is the international president of the Kappa Alphas. She's also the president of Tennessee State University, where Phil, I am a visiting professor. Y'all need to call me Professor Sharpton. And she's the vice chair of President Biden's Board of Advisors, HBCUs. But let me tell you, her father was a leading civil rights activist and a leading civil rights leader. And she's movement in her DNA. Let us acknowledge Glenda Glover of AKA. Let me introduce our panelists. This panel is on politics and voter suppression in the midterms. There's nothing more pressing as we convene than the problem that we saw right after the 2020 election, where there was more people voted than any presidential election in the history of this country. Joe Biden won with more votes than any votes ever cast. And the second highest vote getter in American history was Donald Trump. So don't sleep on what you're dealing with. Donald Trump got more votes than John Kennedy, than Lyndon Johnson, than Barack Obama. So y'all thinking that was then and this is now, it is not over unless we deal with voter suppression. And that's why I wanted to start this by dealing with voter suppression and how we deal with it. Let me welcome first and foremost my little brother. If there ever was a way you could put a photo next to activists, you'd put his photo. He has been a champion, and those of you from New York know him, but you ought to know him nationwide, and you may get to know him after he's elected to his next post. There's press in here, so I won't say how most of NAN is supporting him for governor. I won't say my daughters and everybody. I won't say that because we are nonpartisans. I didn't say that, but he is running for governor. And he is the public advocate of the city of New York, activist extraordinaire, Jumaane Williams. A woman who has stood out with her intellect, her analysis, her writings. You all ought to read her books. I've known her down through the years. She calls it like it is. And we're so honored that she's on our panel, the Associate Professor of Political Science at Fordham University, Christina Greer. A woman who is a vice president at Hamilton County Commissioner. She's a board member of National Action Network, has been for years. Her father was and mother was one of the great civil rights leaders. Her father's still with us, mother passed, and I watched her grow up down through the years. Her father was a major Cincinnati leader for Reverend Jackson. And she has worked along with NAN almost from the beginning. And so she won a county seat that she wasn't supposed to win, but she never stopped working for her people. Alicia Reese. And lastly, we have many of us that work together in harmony in the civil rights community. On Saturday, head of Urban League and ACP and all will be here. I'll measure the movement. And but among the things, and then you that one of our members told me they don't have a ticket for the night. I want to make sure that people that want to come to the dinner tonight, can come. This is a people movement, y'all. You ain't got to have a tuxedo to come to my dinner. I had a tracksuit to about 1997, so ain't no use getting downtown acting like we don't know who we are now. This sister is a embodiment of what we're talking about. She led civil disobedience on the Senate. She's been arrested for it. She's been an organizer in the South for many years. She is a national treasure. I told her coming out of Shiloh Baptist Church in Washington, D.C., when we had the Wake Memorial for Dorothy Height, I said, you're going to have to help fill this gap now, because we need women out front like Dorothy Height fostered out front. And she said, well, Mal, I don't want to push myself out front. I said, all right, then stand in front of me. I'm going to push your butt out there. And she has performed in a way that we're so proud. She is the head of the Black Women's Roundtable, as well as the National Coalition of Black Civic Partnerships, Melanie Campbell. Let me start by asking each of you to give us 2 minutes opening on how you see the challenges of the midterms, especially in light of the voting suppression laws. Let's start with Alicia Reese, then go to Jermani Williams, then come to Professor Greer, and then Melanie Campbell.
First of all,
Mike, give me some sound.
hello. Here we go. First of all, good morning, Professor. I'm glad they have an official title for you because you've been teaching for years. It's good to be back here, and I want to thank so many people, like you said, that I stand on the shoulders, Reverend Jackson, Mama Dukes, my sister, Miss Melanie Campbell. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, and grew up in civil rights. I have won 9 elections. I've been the Vice Mayor of Cincinnati, an Ohio State Representative, President of the Ohio Legislative Black Caucus, and now a Hamilton County Commissioner, where I serve as the Vice President, with only 30% African Americans in Hamilton County. I'm here today. I really want to talk about the midterm election, but I think we have to tie delivery system to voting. And what happens is we ask everyone to get out to vote, and we've marched, and I spoke at the 50th anniversary National Action Network, called for a voter Bill of Rights to put in the state constitution. We've collected over 100,000 signatures. But after the election, we've got to make sure that we deliver, and that's what's going to make people come out to vote. In Hamilton County, I ran in 2020, where we were the first state where they stopped the election hours before the election was supposed to happen. They shut down the entire state. We were the first state that you had to vote by mail. So we had to educate, motivate, and activate with a whole state that was shut down. Because of what I've learned with the National Action Network, and as you've heard from my parents, I got to work and we created what is called Voting is Essential. We had drive-thrus at the gas stations where you could sign the paperwork and learn how to vote. At that time, they had attacked the mail. Remember, they attacked the mail and didn't want to pay the postal workers, so we couldn't depend on the mail. So we had to have people drive through the churches. We had drive-through after you get your communion, get your paperwork, and drive over to the Board of Elections to drop it in the box. At the same time, they were spending $1.5 million to stop me from getting there. We were able to get all of the people trained and ready to go. And so as we go into the midterm election, I just want to say it's more than an election. We had the highest turnout. Trump won Ohio, but Biden won Hamilton County. We delivered. And he had only visited one time to my county. Where we are now, I think, is that we're at a place of we've got to have a bottom-up approach and not a top-down approach. Now, I've been the DNC vice chair of the convention and very involved with the Democratic Party. But we have to have a delivery system, and that's why local races matter. You've got to come from the White House to the State House to the county house to the courthouse to the schoolhouse so we can get some resources down to your house. Now, Washington released the money, but most states had returned the money. When I got elected, only $5 million out of $158 million had gotten to the people. And what we did, I'm a black college graduate, very proud, Grambling State University. I saw where Hampton University had an RV. I flew down to Virginia in the pandemic, met with Hampton because we're HBCUs, brought the idea back to Hamilton County, put my twist on it, and we were able to get $158 million to the streets. We've got a bus. We've got a bus called the 513 Relief Bus. We come in with your vaccine. We come in with food. And we also come in with $158 million you can register right then for not being evicted. Small business money. Be able to have your home mortgages. It's the only model in the state that puts the health and the economics together. And so if we're going to win this midterm election, we have to have a connection between the money that's coming in Washington and electing people who can deliver the goods to the people. If we don't do that, it's like ordering from Amazon and you never get your package. And so my message in this race is that we've got to focus on delivery from the ground up. If you don't deliver, I don't need you running. I don't care what party you in. Because we are in a state of emergency. And so I've been on the ground working hard, and I'm not just registering voters and getting them out to vote. I want them to have something to vote for. And we are trying to vote for our salvation right now. So I'm excited about working with this election, but I only want to work with people who are true to the people. If you just want to get there to be the first, you don't want to call me. If you just want to get there because you're a Democrat or whatever, don't call me. But if you want to bring something to help the people, you call me. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. We going to deliver Hamilton County. We going to get the vote out. And then lastly, I just want to say to my sister, Melanie Campbell, we've been in this a long time. She's been my big sister before I was in politics. And what we're getting ready to do on Friday, this delivery, I don't want y'all to think it just came from Congress and United States Senate. That was good. But we signed letters of black women all over this nation that said you don't have a choice. You better nominate a black woman. And we got a lot of qualified ones. So when you hear Justice Brown Jackson, know that Melody Campbell called Alicia Reese in Cincinnati, and I called somebody in Cleveland. Somebody else called somebody in New Jersey. Somebody called somebody in New York. Black women activated, and because of that, we're going to have a positive result. So I'm looking forward to the conversation. We're doing a lot in Hamilton County. Rev, we challenging the system. We put $11 million to small businesses in grants. We also are building the first ever outdoor interactive black music walk of fame right across the street from the NFL stadium because we own the stadiums. And I'm excited about what we've been able to do. You put the right people in, you put the right delivery system in, the people will run to the polls. So the key message today is delivery. We've got a delivery problem. We got to have some people who can deliver. Thank you.
All right. Jemani Williams.
Peace and blessings.
Get volume.
Testing. 1, 2. I'm on?
Yeah.
Peace and blessings. Love and light, everybody. Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for always being at the front of all of these conversations, for National Action Network always being there. I always say when people say the same thing about you, whether they like you or not, is good. When people who don't like him say, "Where is Al Sharpton now?" People who do like him say, "Where is Al Sharpton?" Because we need him right now. And so it's awesome to have been able to look up to you and now be on a panel with distinguished guests chaired by you. So thank you so much. We are not in hyperbole when we're saying we are facing existential crisis right now. But first, 3 quick things. One, from the inception of the country, there was only a small amount of people who were supposed to be voting anyway, right? So rich, white men, period. And as Chuck Schumer adds, rich, white, Protestant men were supposed to be the ones voting. So the whole battle has been trying to get other people to be able to vote who weren't rich, white, Protestant men. And that struggle hasn't changed, and it still continues. And the further away you are from that, the less likely they actually want you to vote, because that's not what it was created for. As much as people, criticize rightfully the way this country behaves versus what it says it's supposed to be, the one thing everybody agreed on was that what made us different is every few years we actually had the potential to change our leaders. That is awesome. That's an awesome thing that everybody has to say. This is pretty dope. No matter how bad things are, we can change it really quick. And that's what they're coming after right now, because that's the one thing that prevented an actual fascist country or a Nazi country. This is not hyperbole. It is happening here. So if you go back in history and you look at the playbook of how the worst things have happened in society, the playbook is playing out. And on January 6th, they tried to make that happen here in reality. So we know we're kind of oligarchish. We kind of know we have these fascist tendencies and beliefs. But if Donald Trump was installed, we'd be in another period of history that would look like some of the worst things that we've seen. And the one thing that prevented that was the ability for people who are most marginalized to come out, as mentioned, in record numbers to save the nation. So they don't want that to happen again. They want to make sure that anybody who will not vote for the worst of what we are shouldn't be able to vote. So what's happening now is they're putting laws in place illegal to bring water. But that doesn't make any sense. Because they know who has to wait online and who doesn't. They're making things illegal that affects very specific populations of this country. They're usually lower income. They're usually black and brown. It is more important to be able to buy as many guns as you can than it is to be able to vote in the minds of Republicans. That is a real thing. So that's my second point. My third point, and I will say, is right now it is clear, and the Republican Party is wilding out right now, right? It is clear who's trying to do what and who's not. But before it was clear, and hopefully after we survive, the Democratic Party, in my opinion, is a part of the problem as well. And I want to be clear about that as well. Both parties have issues. Generally speaking, having hanging out with elected officials, I know a lot of elected officials who prefer not to have a lot of folks voting. They want to know who their population is so they can speak to, and so they don't always allow things that will increase voter population to happen. And sometimes that's in the Democratic Party as well, and we have to be clear about that. To paraphrase something that Malcolm X said, I believe that there is a dagger about 9 inches in most of this country. Poor folks, working class folks, black and brown, LGBT. The Republican Party keeps it in 9 inches. The Democratic Party pulls it out about 6, and it's only 3. It's not as bad. One kills you right away. One kills you very slowly. And we have to be very clear about that. And I belong to the Democratic Party. I'm here doing my best to try to make it live up to what it says it's supposed to be. So we're clear where we are now in the demarcation. But I don't want us to forget, anywhere that you have leadership, even if it's Democrat, the people who are suffering look the same in the leadership as Republican. And so we have to be honest about that so we can hold everybody accountable as our democracy is facing the threat of its life.
Professor Greer.
There we go. Hello? We're good? So thank you, Rev, for always assembling a great group of academics, professor, politicians, and folks who care about our democracy and saving our democracy. So I'm going to zoom out about 30,000 feet. So the bad news, let's start with the bad news. The bad news is so many districts in this country have been gerrymandered. They've been drawn by Republicans to make sure that they can decrease our vote. They've either packed us all in one tiny district to decrease the power of our vote, or they've cracked up our districts to make sure that we don't have the power. This is a very highly educated group, but I want to see a show of hands. How many of you can list your city council member, your state legislator, and your state senator? So this is not a representative sample. However, we do know, though, if you ask people in your family and people in your community if they can answer that same question, everyone's hands should be up. And we know, just as the candidate for governor just mentioned, so many politicians bank on the fact that we don't know who is in charge. We don't know who is doing the work, and therefore we can't keep pressure on those individuals to give us the goods and services that we deserve and that we demand. And so if you don't know who your representatives are, I would strongly suggest you spend 5 minutes a day. It's sort of like brushing your teeth twice a day. You should be checking in on your democracy minimum twice a day. I would also say, you know, the same way we're asking everyone to know their status when it comes to COVID, we need to know our status when it comes to voting in elections. We need to make sure that we are registered. We need to make sure if we have moved or a loved one has moved or a family or friend has moved, we need to make sure that we help them register. Not everyone, the digital divide is real. Not everyone knows how to get that information. And so then we need to keep our foot in the gas. So many people who care about this country have not voted. So we know that for presidential elections, a successful presidential election is participation by about 60% of the voting eligible population. That means 40% of Americans don't bother to show up. We know that the number is drastically smaller when it comes to midterm elections, and it's even worse when it comes to municipal elections. We're seeing about 20–25% of people bothering to show up to vote for the mayor of New York City, right? So that's embarrassing because we know that these people are in charge of billions, not millions, billions of dollars. And so then the last two things that I'll leave you all with is one, I would like to encourage some of you to think about running for office. Not everybody needs to be president of the United States, but we have thousands of elected offices around this country that you can actually be a part of your democracy to change. So I would, especially the women in the room, I would encourage you to think about doing that. And then the last piece is something that I've sort of been cultivating over the years. It's called political tithing. Many of us donate to our religious organizations, as we should, but we need to be thinking about donating to our elected officials as well, right? Because so many black candidates can't get out of the gate because they just don't have the funds. And some of them fall into the wrong hands because they need money to go further. And then they end up owing certain people favors, etc. So $5 a month can go a very long way for especially an upstart candidate or a candidate who is really doing the work, who's doing the activist work, and who's not beholden to big money and big business. So those are some things I want you all to think about. Thank you.
As we get ready to hear from Melanie Campbell, I'm going to take 5 people from the audience that have a question to get in the middle. Just 5. Trudy Grant and Katrina, y'all said it at 5, the first 5 that need to address the panel. Melanie Campbell.
Can you hear me? Yep. Thank you, Rev. Thank you for being my brother in this struggle. For being my brother when the cameras are on, when the cameras are off. Being in the foxhole 24/7. And that's where we are. I see Mama Dukes and my sister, Dr. Glover, and so many sisters. I'm going to get in trouble, and my brothers. I will be very brief because I know we have folks wanting to ask questions. But, you know, here's where we are. Because this is an educated audience. We understand the politics. We understand what's happening. And so as black people, we have always had to adjust. Because Cora Berry said it best. We have never had the freedom to vote. We've always had to have federal legislation to protect that right to vote. We've had to, every 25 years, get the Enforcement of Voting Rights Act reauthorized. So the idea of having the freedom to vote is something that we are still fighting for. And part of that has been to adjust when we have to adjust, Alicia. So here, everybody know we didn't like to use absentee ballots because we didn't trust it. But when we had to because of COVID, what did we do? We used the absentee ballots. So what did the folks who don't want to see inclusion of black and brown folks do? They looked and they dissected how we voted in 2020.
how in the hell did we do that, right? So they've made these laws that we're going to keep fighting for. We'll go to jail if we have to, Rev, as you know we all have been doing, to keep fighting for the vote. But in the meantime, the election has started. So I want to give you a little homework. So find out in your state what they have done and what you need to do to adjust to that reality while we keep fighting for voting rights. What I wanted to share is that we, as black women, we do this poll, Rev, every year, Black Women's Roundtable, in essence, and voting rights is like number 3. Systemic racism is still up there, right? The issues around economic stress that we're under, living wages, all these things are, a lot of things are coming at us when it comes to the issues. But we have to organize ourselves. Texas already showed us how it can impact us. So if they've changed your laws to say that you can't use the absentee ballot, then we got to go back to the old-fashioned way. We go everywhere else. We go do, look, we got these things right here, right? I keep a COVID test. I have a whole package of them that I carry with me now. So if I'm around somebody, I'm not quite sure. Say, here, for love, here, you can take that test, and then let's get together. I did it to my family this weekend. Yes, I did. I love y'all. Birthday. Here, take this test. We ain't been around each other for 30 days. We have to do what we have to do so we can keep moving, right? And so if they've taken that away in your state, then find another way. Go back to the old-fashioned way. Do what you need to do. Check your voter registration status now. Organize your voter registration campaigns to make sure that we do what we need to do while they are attacking us. Some of this, we're going to need the Justice Department, Rev. We've all been working as a coalition to tell them they need to monitor what's going on in these elections. The Justice Department has some power. Right now, they don't have to wait on us having voting rights reform done. Use every tool in your toolbox. And we say that to the Biden-Harris. I've been in the rooms with Rev and other colleagues, and we fought. I've been in the rooms with black women and others to keep pushing. So we're going to keep pushing the administration, because when you talk about results, there's not enough that's been done, but there's been a lot that has been done. And we cannot allow ourselves to fall asleep on what didn't happen, because a lot has happened with this administration, and we're about to see one big part of that in Judge Ketanji, I know to say this, Ketanji Brown Jackson. Say it with me. Ketanji Brown Jackson become the first black woman U.S. Supreme Court justice in this land. We would not sleep that and act like it don't matter. I got other things I'd like to say, but I know the time is tight.
All right.
More. Do what you need to do in your community. We have to do that. We will mobilize our vote. Say it with me. We will mobilize our vote. We will turn out our vote. We will protect our vote in 2022. Thank you.
All right. Let's go to the floor. We got sound?
Testing 1, 2.
Yeah,
testing.
we got.
I'm Brenda Coles, the president for the Richmond, Virginia
You
chapter.
got to hold it close. We cannot hear her.
I'm Brenda Coles, the Richmond, Virginia chapter of the National Action Network. And what all you have said, Reverend Sharpton, hi Reverend Sharpton, and thank you for this convention. What everyone said is very, very important for us to hear today. As you know, Virginia, I know it is. As you know, Virginia have lost across the board with the Democrats. We're now Republican. Ms. Reese, you said something very important when it came to messaging. But I want to get your take on visibility. One of the problems was the McCullough campaign came out 1 month and a half for campaigning. I've been on the field for 50 years of grassroots in campaigning. I could not believe even one and a half month of campaigning. Glenn Youngkin was out there for over a year. What is your take on we got to do a better job as Democrats for visibility?
All right. Sister Cole asked a great question.
That's an excellent question. One of the things I know Reverend Sharpton and our National Action Network and many of us have been saying, and that's why I said we got to have a bottom-up approach instead of a top-down approach. And we got to have people on the ground. We cannot be important the last 30 days of the campaign. but you want us to rush out to the polls and have a huge turnout. You show if we're important by bringing us in on the front end. And I will tell you, in Hamilton County, in Cincinnati, Ohio, when I was running, President Biden, who I support, they only came to Cincinnati one time, and they didn't ask us on the ground. They were down at the Union Terminal, and it was a nice place, but we were already voting. I was at the polls, and we were wrapped around the building. And so we've got to have, the messaging has to come from the people. People now we get our information where we get our information. Don't run through the churches, and I'm a proud member of my church, New Friendship Baptist Church, but don't show up last 30 days to wave your hand, and then you running on out the door. And so I think that the messaging now has to be that we can't be important only the 30 days before the election, and then after the election we become unimportant again. So that's why we've got to tie, and that's what Reverend Sharpton has been with, tying the issues, the delivery. We got to get the George Floyd bill passed. We gonna run to the polls when we get it passed. We got to get voting rights passed in law. Then we'll run to the polls. We must tie delivery with messaging. And I tell them all the time, don't show up the last 30 days. Don't come asking me to endorse you at the beginning of the campaign, and I don't see you to the last 30 days. We want to be on the front end and not the back end of the election.
Rev. Sister.
Sound.
Hello. Sister, I live in Virginia. Myself, I live in the Commonwealth, and I will say to you, part of it is you got to have the right candidate. And I love Terry McAuliffe, but he shouldn't have run. One, two. It has been a period of black women's leadership. There were black women who were running for that race who should have been on that ticket. That's all I'm gonna say about it.
All right.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm Flowers from Botham, New York. Of course, we support Jumani. We have the same problem you might have. How do we get our young people who didn't vote in record numbers until it was time for Obama? How do we get them back in the polls and let them know that they have a stake in this race in getting the George Floyd Act and the John Lewis Act passed? Because without them, that's our secret force. They're the hiding force. It's not up. The women are up. The men are up. The elders are up. 76. Where are they? And how do we get them?
Well, as someone who has the honor and the privilege of teaching the youth of America, they're leaving the political process because they don't feel as though their elected officials talk about any issues that are of concern to them.
Correct.
So when we had the State of the Union, I put together a little bingo. We wrote 50 items on the board, and I put together a little bingo card for everyone to have. They were incensed that climate change wasn't mentioned, that school debt wasn't mentioned. Student loans weren't mentioned at all in the State of the Union, I think one quick sentence. And so we have to keep pressure on our local, state, and federal officials to keep talking about issues that are of grave concern to millennials and also Generation Z. Generation Z is essentially saying, we're not going to get Social Security, we don't have any jobs, our parents are broke, they may not get Social Security, and we're living in a global pandemic and haven't had any normalcy in years. So we have to encourage them to A, run for office so they can actually take the baton, but still keep pressure on our local, state, and federal officials. And the reason why I keep stressing local and state is because these people are in a pipeline. So some of these wackos that we see in Washington, D.C. got their start in their home states in lower offices, and they remained unchecked, and they kept getting promoted and failing upwards, as we know a lot of folks like to do, and now they are senators, U.S. senators, in states making grave decisions about our health, our wealth, and our bodies. And so to get young people, we actually have to incentivize them and actually talk about policies that are of concern to them.
Thank you.
Just to add, and then we'll combine the last question. I want to be clear from that last question. The Democratic Party takes black votes for granted, period. Here in New York State, they take black and Latinx votes for granted, period. One of the problems with the party, the Democratic Party and leaders try to replace one set of elite people with their set of elite people. And that's the problem. We need to be electing people who are going to try to break up a system that will keep any amount of dagger in people's back. And so the Democratic Party benefits from those 3 inches, so they don't want to take it all the way out. And the young people are actually seeing that. What they're saying is the extractive system that we live in right now is not beneficial. And so we keep electing elected officials whose position is more important than the people that they're representing. And that is a very real issue that we see across the board. So we have to, I was a Bernie delegate, all right, but we have to, the Republican Party has elected wackos who are not talking about, they're saying the status quo is bad, and it's working. The Democratic Party refuses to adopt any kind of messaging like that, even though it's beneficial, because they want to make sure that their elite stays in. And that's a huge part of the problem, and we have to be clear about that because so many things are at stake. And lastly, we can't formulate young people's programs and ideas without young people there. Very often, you're designing something for people that are not even present.
Third question.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, and the wonderful panel for this wonderful conversation. My question is, well, first, my name is Daniel, a community leader from the Bronx. My question is for Public Advocate Williams. Thank you for teaching about the method of the Democratic and Republican Party. But what about the Independent Party? Will you say it's similar or better?
I have a problem. I'm clear. I have a problem with the two-party system, period. I think that system keeps people who are suffering the most suffering because the Democratic Party is much better at presenting a boogeyman or woman than presenting a vision to actually vote for. But I am clear, especially at times like this, when there's an existential crisis like we had with Donald Trump, it was very clear. I actually am a member also of the Working Families Party. And so I definitely support other parties that can help get where we need to go. Right now, though, we are in a two-party system, and that is a real thing. So at once, I think we're often, and this is something that I think black folks understand, we're in a system trying to survive in that system while trying to change it to something that's better. And so I just want people to vote, period. I want people to be engaged in the system and the voting process, but I want people to be clear, right? We're often, the reason we haven't got to where we want to go, Republican or Democrat, is because both of them have the same issues and the same problems with changing the system the way it is because it benefits a small part of people. But I'm also clear that if you have to choose between Biden and Trump, that I'm clear where I have to go. But I don't want to choose any one of them, so I support other people like Bernie who are saying, let's smash the whole thing up because it's a problem. So we just have to be real about those things as we're moving forward. And I apologize because I have to leave. I'm very sorry.
All right.
But I did want to say two things to what the sister was saying. We do have to continue to fight, but to what the sister was saying, even in that fight, whatever rules they set up, we got to make sure we educate our people so they can follow those rules and get to that voting bank. Thank you.
Thank you. We got
Good morning.
two more.
Okay. My name is Mylinda Lee, and I'm an advocate for special needs. And my question is posed as this. How many of us in here have special needs? I'm going to answer that for you. We all do.
Special needs.
Special needs. So I'm going to be clear. Special needs is in the building, and all our kids that have special needs are not getting what they're entitled to. So my question that I pose to you, do y'all recognize that oath is a situation that can't take effect because they do not have the knowledge and the tools to make impartial hearings impartial? So you first have to look at that. I need y'all all to look at that throughout the state. Secondly, our kids have been devastated from the virtual education process. They are entitled to compensatory services. And if the schools are not willing to do it, we have to come to y'all to insist that our kids that are falling behind and not faring where they should be get what they need. Thirdly, I need y'all to incite a conversation and make it proper so that now our kids with intellectual disability that were in the past called people with Down syndrome or mental retardation, I need you to afford them more than a Medicaid reimbursement. I need you to afford them vocational training and actually put them in position to win. They emulate our normancy. What is normal? I, myself, have a child with Down syndrome. And I love you, Reverend. I love all y'all. But we have to take a stance because now is the time. My daughter is 25 years old, so I don't speak for just her. I ask the question, what are we going to do to change this now?
Thank you for that. I just want to mention, the reason I sat back down, I have Tourette's syndrome and ADHD. I made it through the public school system from preschool to master's because I walked with the Most High, and I had a black mother who wasn't taking nothing for an answer. But that really touched me because it's correct. And we in my office are actually working on that issue as much as possible. The pandemic impacted everybody. It impacted some folks more. And even as we're reopening, we're not focusing on those kids as much as we can. If there's a specific problem or you have some ideas, can somebody stay? This is from my office, my deputy public advocate and organizer. We organize around these issues. So I just want to say that. So we please, if you can see before we leave, so we can help, because that's a real issue.
They will be right here. Last question for this panel.
Okay. Good day, everybody, and God bless everybody. My name is Sister Reverend Word. I'm a NAN lifetime member, and I reside in Harlem. Therefore, I attend the Harlem headquarters of NAN every Saturday. I've learned valuable lessons from the speakers that attend National Action Network. And one thing I have learned that causes me to ask you this question: if President Biden does a carve-out for our voting rights, is that an absolute win that can never be undone?
I think you said, could he do a carve-out?
An executive order.
Executive order. I mean, they're working on some things, but that's not going to fix the problem. I mean, it can help, like using the different agencies. Really, it's his Justice Department. It's the Justice Department that, in my opinion, has more power. But we also know that the Congressional Black Caucus has not stopped. I believe we're going to be hearing from them very, very soon. We're not going to stop fighting to try to get some part of voting rights reform done, especially when it comes to enforcement powers. That's what they did in 2013 when they struck down in Shelby versus Holder case in Supreme Court. So I think part of it is we have to kind of use all of it. They can do whatever executive actions, but some of this won't affect the states that have passed these laws. Whatever executive actions they do, it may help in access to the ballot, right? But it won't stop them from locking you up, if you, like the brother talked about in Georgia, with water, or throwing you off of local boards of elections, all those other kinds of things. So we also have to have a trifecta strategy, right? Keep fighting for voting rights, organize for this election, and challenge the administration through the Justice Department and the White House to do all they can to provide the best access possible. So I think a three-pronged approach.
Reverend Sharpton, can I just say three things I think is important? One, the National Action Network, through Reverend Sharpton's leadership, we were out front calling for a constitutional amendment. That's where it needs to go. Each state, our boards of elections, they're called state secretaries of states. And most state constitutions do not protect your right to vote. So we need to have that. In Ohio, we got 100,000 signatures. We're trying to move that direction. That will give you a chance to vote on it and make it permanent. Number two, obviously, the voting rights bill that's in John Lewis' bill, we want to get that passed. But then the third thing is an option of executive order. It will be temporary, but at least we would be moving forward on that. So those are the three things. And just the last thing I want to say about the young people voting, the one thing about young people, they're on a right now program. They're not 30 days, 60 days. We got to deliver for them right now. And student loan deferral is different than we're getting rid of student loan debt. They know the difference. So we got to start delivering. They're not going to be as patient as our ancestors and people that came before us, or even us on this panel. They are looking at, they get on their phone, they want to hit a button, and they want to see some results. So if we can start getting some right now things, they'll show that they will show up. So we have to have delivery as part of our messaging. It can't be a message without delivering. I'm in marketing. We got to have the delivery part.
And one of the things, thank you for this panel. One of the things that we want to address with young people when we come back after the break, Fat Joe, one of the hip-hop legends, is going to speak at around 2:30 this afternoon about how we can attract young people. Fat Joe will be here. You that have your journals, how many of y'all have your journal, convention journal? All right, because we didn't spend a lot of money for y'all not to get them. That ain't a colored book. We got an agenda in there. Before we bring on the next panel on criminal justice, and they're all here we couldn't close voting without hearing some words of wisdom for a man who registered more voters than anyone alive, Reverend Jesse Jackson. Reverend Jackson, give him a mic. I told y'all to have a mic ready.
Express my thanks to you, Brother Al. Get up, please. Ms. Melody. Thank you very much, Al, for this sterling convention. You know, we are doing an awful lot of analyzing, not much acting. The group is doing a lot of service. When somebody's injured, you try to service them. We got to fight the lion, not just do service and scratch. When Al fights the lion, he deserves a big hand. Al, I thank you so much. Let me say this to you, my friends, on pure voting. The issue is not just they want us to vote. We got to take the slave out of people's mindset on voting. I'm saying this, that I just left Arkansas 3 days ago. Remember the Black Caucus of the state. How many unregistered blacks in the state look like they're looking in headlights? 230-some thousand unregistered vote. The number didn't vote. Now, I'm trying to say to you, my friends, this. If you put on 200,000 more blacks on the books, how to draw lines? We become U.S. citizens in that state. Government in that state. As they walked out to the convention floor at the Church of God convention, shared with Al Monday night, the 4th, Tuesday night, I guess it was. Dr. King's last speech was at Church of God convention, Mason Temple. I got almost last to speak, brother, by the chief apostle. No one mentioned Memphis 1968 and 2022, it take place at that convention. I'm trying to say something, Reverend. Here we are at the Church of God in Christ convention, April 4th. Deep in the ritual, bringing another bishop. I'm going to mention April 4th, what it meant to us. Some things that matter to us other than just color. For example, if you put on the black running for Congress in that state, Secretary of State and U.S. Senator, 200,000 more blacks in the books in that state, you elect U.S. Senator and Governor from Arkansas. Even truer in South Carolina and in Mississippi. When Harold Washington ran in 1983, I said, I don't want to run, but if I do run, you have to raise 50,000 new voters and $250,000. We raised 500,000, but 400,000 new voters. I think the 400,000 blacks walking around that state unregistered, that city, amazing to me. Let me see this book here for me. Part of what's happening is, as we look at the scene, Mr. Chapman, Civil Rights Movement, I want you to hear this. It's very important data. 1880 to 1940, 5,000 blacks were lynched. Not shot, lynched. After they have service after church on Sunday. It was a lynching rally, hanging something up on the street. We passed for several days. Remember, black left the South, North, so such great numbers. It's fear. Dr. Howard came to Chicago in the hearse. And he was dead. Now these numbers, Alabama, 381. Arkansas, 490. Florida, 300. Georgia, 389. Kentucky, 168. Louisiana, 549. Mississippi, 654. North Carolina, 123. South Carolina, 185. Tennessee, 233. Texas, 335. Virginia, 84. We chip into the whole session of, you know, so we come in at the material level. That's 1955. The season of lynching was worse than slavery. In slavery, there's some families living in slave conditions, but they don't want to kill the slaves that didn't work, right? Slaveocracy. And democracy, brought by Reese politics, they kill us in great numbers. Now, I'm saying this, Al, with all of the, if we put on voter march on the white people doing the wrong thing, we can more put on voter registration. So we can do that. That's a house-to-house, neighbor-to-neighbor thing. Every high school senior should register and vote. Should come across the stage, plumb in one hand, the vote card in the other. So every high school senior.
Every high school senior
should come across the stage.
Should come across the stage.
Plumb in one hand.
With a diploma in one hand.
Voter card in the other.
And voter card in the other.
Every, you know, every city college student who would have had, except for Manchester and Cinnamon, would have had 3 city colleges. Make kids come out of high school, Al. They can't go to college, they can't afford it. They go to city colleges. They can learn about to be a tradesman, brick mason, plumber, barber, beautician, nurse, and all that. If we win, we get 3 city colleges. So 6 are high. So a lot of focus on what they're doing to us. Us guys that talk to us neighbor, us grandmama. If us put our weight on our neighborhood, Al, sermon came to my mind the other night. I looked at the people marching in the church. The sin of leaving the one lost sheep behind. If Jesus had not dealt with lost sheep, he could have gone to hell. The lost sheep. We got some lost sheep in voter rolls. We focus on who elected them, who did vote. The lost sheep, those who were behind. You remember, it's the lost sheep.
Lost sheep.
There's enough lost sheep to help the other sheep win. There's enough unregistered voters to elect everybody comfortably. Thank you, Al.
All right, give him a hand. All right, Reverend Jackson. Let me bring on our next panel, because I know some people have schedules. Let me bring first the moderator of the next panel, who I call the Attorney General of Black America, Attorney Ben Crump. Y'all take the mic so he can help the Reverend. Thank you. Okay, Attorney Crump, you can introduce the panel.
Thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for always, and National Action Network for always being the union for our community. The fact when the police kill us, they have a police union that comes and advise the police and comfort the police and make sure they can sleep peacefully at night after they kill us. But who provides comfort and advice and guidance for our people, our community, for our children? And that's why we're here with the National Action Network to say thank you and talk about not only the pain, but the purpose and how we get to solutions. And so we have subject matter experts who have a lived experience, not something that's been taught in a book, but something that they have had to live through. Even when all the cameras are gone, even when there's no convention going on, every day they're thinking about Trayvon, they're thinking about George, they're thinking about Ahmaud, they're thinking about Breonna, they're thinking about Amir, they're thinking about Amir, they're thinking about Stefante, they're thinking about Sean, they're thinking about James Sutherland, so many names. And so I know we have a lot of people in the audience who are subject matter experts, and we're going to acknowledge them. But for this panel, I want to introduce the psalm and refamiliarize you with others who already know not just their stories by hashtag, but know these individuals through love and prayer. First, we have a woman who really defied all the odds. Dr. Glover, she made history. Her and the father of Ahmaud Arbery, Marcus Arbery, who I understand is in the audience. But Wanda Cooper Jones, this shero, not only made sure that there were convictions on the state level, but she was dogmatic in insisting that there be a trial on the federal level, where they made history for the first time in the state of Georgia of having a federal hate crime conviction. Y'all please show your love and respect for Miss Wanda Cooper Jones, the mother of Ahmaud Arbery. Thank you, Wanda. And next, we have a sister, Reverend Al, who you know you preached the eulogy for, is very similar to Breonna Taylor. These no-knock warrants where they just busting our front doors in the wee hours of the morning, 1 o'clock at Breonna, 6 a.m. for Amir Locke in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And I know Reverend Al and National Action Network has been very generous to do a press conference after we finish this panel, because we're getting blowed up in the media as we speak at this very moment. Because for whatever reason, they made a decision that they're not going to charge the police officer who busted in his front door with one of these dangerous, unnecessary, unjustifiable, unconstitutional no-knock warrants, illegal no-knock warrants, just like Breonna Taylor. And they shot and killed Amir as he woke up. And I just say this as we bring her up. Reverend Al, they keep saying, well, it was a life or death situation and the officer had to shoot because they were in fear of their life. But the problem with that, Alicia, is you created the life or death situation. And now you're going to justify it based on your actions. And you know, after Breonna Taylor, we found out 82% of the time when they busted in, Kendrick, somebody's door, it was a black person. I mean, they ain't busting into white people's doors in the middle of the night and then justifying killing our children. And so we got to keep standing up, and we got to call a spade a spade. So, yeah, it's with a heavy heart. And just know, she just received this information less than an hour ago, but she still had the courage to come out and be on the panel to show support to these other families, and thank you for your prayers. So please give a lot of love and respect at this minute in particular to Miss Karen Wells, the mother of Amir Locke. And then a woman I know you all know, she represents all of us so well, especially her home city of New York. The first I Can't Breathe case with Eric Garner, who was on videotape, and we all thought, Reverend Allen, if we had video, that would be enough, but you know, they always keep moving the goalposts back on our people and our community. But she was resilient, and she won't give up. I know right now, Eric Garner was selling Lucy cigarettes, and they said, allegedly, and they said because of that, they used deadly force. And now, just know, they are contemplating, right, Kendrick Meeks, they are contemplating making laws where they talking about banning menthol. Think about the unexpected consequences since most black people smoke menthol cigarettes, how it's going to be a pretextual reason. Like the police can tell if the cigarette you're smoking is menthol or not. We were born at night, but not last night. And so this is going to be another reason for them to come and have excessive interactions with our community. But not if Gwen Carr got anything to do with it. Give a great round of applause for Gwen Carr. This next young man is a young man I know. I watched him grow up. He was the president of Bethune-Cookman College, and he helps run the foundation for George Floyd's sister, Miss Bridget Floyd. And so I want to bring both of them up because we know the impact that the campaign for justice for George Floyd had not only on their family, not only on the state of Minnesota, but the United States of America. And so we continue to remember George Floyd's sacrifice as an opportunity to make America finally pass police reform, which we haven't had police reform, Reverend Al, since Lyndon Baines Johnson, Great Society legislation in the 1960s. Now, Reverend Al, I don't even know, that's when you used to wear sweatsuits. And since my mentor, we've been fighting since then. We didn't get police reform, Reverend Al, after Rodney King. We thought we were going to get it then. Then we thought after Michael Brown and Ferguson, we thought we were going to get it then. And certainly after we watched George Floyd tortured to death for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, we thought we were going to get it then. But yet, the struggle continues. And I'm very thankful to the Floyd family for helping lead that struggle. Bridget Floyd, Jakari, y'all please come to the stand. Now, this next sister is a person who started the Sisters of the Movement after she tragically, like Karen, had to learn about her brother's tragic death in Dallas, Texas, while he was sitting on the couch, Reverend Al, eating ice cream in his own apartment, minding his own business. This white policewoman allegedly had the wrong apartment, came in the front door, shot and killed him, and then, get this, National Action Network, and then she claimed self-defense, even though she was in his apartment. Where they do that at? But her family stood strong. They made history because it was the first time that a white policewoman in the United States of America was convicted for first-degree murder. Y'all please show your love for Miss Alyssa Finley, the sister of Botham Jean. And this next young man doesn't need an introduction, really. You've come to know him in advocating and articulating for his brother like Bridget. And he, you know, he's done it so well, Reverend Al. Everybody keep trying to figure out when he's going to become a congressman from this great state of Texas. But a young man who, you know, I always think I grew up humbly and with a single mother in government housing projects as well. And when you're in that situation, you not only are close to your family, you close physically in proximity to your family. You sleep in the same bed with your brothers and the family. And he shared a bed with George for all of his life, as he tells it, until he was able to get a bigger place. But I can only imagine every time they talk about George Floyd, they bare their heart and they help make America better for doing it. So I want you all to give a lot of love and support for future Congressman Philonis Floyd. And then the final panel member certainly doesn't need an introduction, but I'll try to do one anyway. And Reverend Al, it is hard to believe that it's been 10 years since Trayvon Martin, this 17-year-old kid, was walking home, minding his business, talking on the cell phone with his high school friend with only a bag of Skittles and a can of iced tea, and the neighborhood watch volunteer with a 9mm gun profiled, pursued, and shot him in the heart. And then, because this thing called Stand Your Ground, he went home and slept in his bed at night while Trayvon's parents haven't gotten peace since then. And that's why we continue to exalt his name, even though it's been 10 years, because in many ways, the killing of Trayvon raised the consciousness level of what it meant to be profiled because of the color of your skin. So without further ado, y'all give it up for a lady who's been on the front line along with Miss Gwen and others for a long, long time, Miss Sabrina Fulton.
Let me say before, they can all be seated, let me say before Ben Crump asks the panelists a question and take 5 from the audience, that there are other victims. Because NAN has been involved, we have a lot of family members that come to our convention. These are the ones we put on the panel because we'd be here all day if we had everybody on the panel. But I do want to acknowledge several that are here. I see in the audience the brother of Stevante Clark, come up here from Sacramento, California, brother of Stephon Clark. Yeah, y'all, yeah. Stevante, let me tell you, when I went to Sacramento to preach the funeral of his brother, everybody was talking about, you know, Stevante has got a whole following in the community, and he don't hear nothing. So I said, all right, I come out of Brooklyn, I understand all that. And I went and got to the funeral. Everybody was afraid of what Devontae was going to do. And lady got up, one of the civic leaders, and she started talking. And Devontae jumped up and said, "Y'all ain't done nothing in the community." And went on for her. Reverend Porter was there. And then he looked, he said, "Al Sharpton, you showed up." And I got up to do the eulogy, and he put his arm around my neck. A lot of y'all saw the picture. And the whole time I preached, he was on my neck. I stopped preaching, Bridget said, when I was 4 years old, I never preached with a Negro on my neck. But he's become an activist and leader. I'm so proud of him, I don't know what I want to do. And I saw, that's my little brother. And his mother and grandmother here, they have a foundation. Where's mama and grandma? In order to give them a hand. The mother and grandmother of Stephon Clark, killed 30 feet from his grandmother's bed in the backyard of the house. I see the father of Ahmaud Arbery. We have Wanda on the panel, and Wanda really did strike a blow for freedom with that federal court. And the father, Marcus Arbery, and he said, "Wanda's on the panel, but I want to be there," and we're glad to have him with us. Stand up, Marcus Arbery. And the son of Eric Garner, who's always at the rallies and come into his own. Come on, step out here. Eric Garner Jr. is in the house. Come out here where they can see you. All right. And in the mid-'60s, one of the worst cases that I've ever heard of. A young man was getting ready to get married the next day. They had a bachelor party for him, his father. And he and two friends on the way home stopped by police, shot at him 51 times. Sean Bell. And I've worked with this family, and he's got a real, genuine, wholesome family. His mother, a God-fearing woman who's never left the movement. She's one of the co-creators of Mothers of the Movement, and she's my sister. Stand up, Sister Valerie Bell. And one of the cases that really needs a lot more attention, stand up, Amy and Deacon Sutherland. Where are the Sutherlands at? James Sutherland and Amy Sutherland from South Carolina. All right, I'm going to give it back to Ben. We're going to have him raise a question to the panel, and then you can do 5 questions here. I want y'all to know this lady, this sister here that keeps going back with all this regalia. Stand up, Sister Shabazz. She is not just looking like an African princess. She is the daughter of Malcolm X. Malak Shabazz. And the daughter, let me be clear, the daughter of Malcolm X and Dr. Betty Shabazz. And Dr. Betty Shabazz is my daughter's godmother. And even though I come out the King movement, she looked out for my daughter. She's the one who put them in school. And so Malak and all of us are like family. So when you see her run around giving orders, because she's family here, and y'all listen to whatever Malak say. Because she is Malcolm's daughter, not Martin. She will get you straight.
Thank you, Reverend Al. Y'all give a big round of applause for our national civil rights leader, Reverend Al Sharpton. And before we start the panel, we want to introduce you all to a young man that and his family that Reverend and I helped a lot. You all saw the video. It went viral all over America. And thank God he didn't end up dead. But we know, because of what we saw in that video, the bigoted policing of how they treat our children in New Jersey, in the mall. You know, Dominique Sharpton and I thought it was appropriate that we bring this young 14-year-old kid up with his family to talk about how it ends up where it becomes a Trayvon or Amir or a Stephon Clark. It starts with a presumption of guilt based on our skin color. And so I want you to look at the very face of police bigoted treatment of our children. Please give a big round of applause for Zakai and his mother and father as they come to the stage. And they're going to make a brief remarks to you, and then we're going to move our panel. But Zakai, stand next to your mother. Rev, I don't know if you've ever met Zakai. I know we talked to them on the phone.
Okay, my name is Ebony Hussein. This is my son. My name is Ebony Hussein. Good? Okay. My name is Ebony Hussein. My son behind me, Zakai, and then my husband, Jihad. I wrote my thoughts down just to keep them organized, so bear with me. The viral video of the fight between the black teen and what was assumed to be a white teen of Bridgewater Mall. That black teenage boy is my son, Kai. Kai, an 8th grader, while defending his friend, a 7th grader, from an aggressor, an 11th grader, a brawl ensued. As the police officers arrived at the scene, the aggressor was on top of Kai, while Kai was on the ground. One officer, a male, tackled Kai while he was on the ground. The second officer, a female, made sure that the apparent bigger, taller, older, whiter-looking high school student who was on top of or standing over Kai, she attentively and cautiously sat him down and made sure he was safe. She then left, walked away, and felt immediately comfortable enough to have her back facing the older, bigger aggressor while she left him sitting there uncuffed and now unattended, watching, while both of them, the two officers, knelt on Kai's back to help each other handcuff this 14-year-old black boy. Afterwards, the seemingly white boy offers his wrist up to also be handcuffed. The female officer patted the older teen on the shoulder as if to say, "We got your back. You're safe now." A little while after Kai had been handcuffed for about 30 minutes, I arrived to pick him up. The male officer told me Kai was handcuffed because it was protocol. Meanwhile, the hostile, white-looking teen, who was at no point restrained, no cuffs, what's the protocol exactly? What is protocol? To first and only detain the melanated individual involved? Before the officers properly assessed the situation, my black son was automatically their target. The black boy obviously looked somehow more intimidating. The black boy was apparently the one and only threat within the entire duration of the encounter. The black boy was immediately at fault, assumed the worst of, presumed guilty. The black boy, sorry. I apologize. This black boy was immediately at fault, assumed the worst of, presumed guilty. The black boy's parents are now the ones responsible for the damages caused by the officers' blatant misconduct. I say black boy so loosely because that's all these officers saw in that moment, and all the moments thereafter. At first glance, you can obviously notice a few things. This other boy is bigger, taller, standing over Kai, and has the similar features of a white boy. Kai is noticeably shorter, smaller, and underneath this bigger, taller teen boy. But Kai was tackled and handcuffed, and the bigger aggressor, the one that started all the drama in the first place, was treated like a victim. Yes, the white-looking boy had to be the victim, no matter what their eyes actually saw, there being the officers. No matter what they actually saw, they say seeing isn't believing, that believing is seeing. I believe that to mean you don't see the truth if you don't believe it. I guess that's why I'm not fully processing all of this blatant hate and bias. I just refuse to believe it. So, if officers have already committed themselves to misunderstanding and acting on their unreasonable, preconceived ideas and opinions about the black race, regardless of the facts, those biased beliefs and accusations are what they will see as true. That black is guilty, even after proven innocent. If officers have already committed themselves to misunderstanding and acting on unreasonable, preconceived ideas and opinions about the black race, the biased beliefs and accusations are what they will see as true. If the ones in authority choose to believe these ridiculously inaccurate and evil notions about people who simply look different from them, with or without valid reason, how can they effectively do their jobs? This is just another opportunity to continue this ongoing fight for equality and to correct a disgustingly hypocritical, unjust, and unstable government system. Land of the free. We can't celebrate freedom until we are all free. Thank you.
I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for standing up to us as black children.
Thank you so much, Ebony. Thank you all for standing up for our black children. If we don't stand up for our children, nobody else will stand up for our children. And as they leave, it really is profound because we see it every day in courtrooms. When they wrongfully accuse us, we end up dead or we end up in prison, wrongfully convicted. I know Derek Harris, producer of the Wu-Tang Clan, was wrongfully accused and spent 4 years on Rikers Island, and they had no evidence whatsoever. I take that back, Reverend Al. They falsified evidence. They knew he didn't do it. But it's what Ebony is talking about. When they see black and they want to have a narrative, you end up with this panel. Shoot first, ask questions later. So we're going to ask just one question from each panel member, and that question is this, and we'll go in the order of which you were called, and that is, tell the audience what happened in the tragedy to make you be part of this fraternity that no family member wants to be part of, being killed by the people who are supposed to protect and serve you unjustly. And then, how do you deal with that pain, and how have you transformed that pain into purpose? And what is the purpose of the legacy of your loved one? And with that, and I know she's new on the panel, do you want to have an old veteran like Gwen Claus, Sabrina go first one? Or? Okay, all right. So Sabrina, Gwen, okay. Sabrina, she said you a little older in this situation. So, y'all, Sabrina, I mean, you have been an example for so many. You can tell the people about how you transform pain into purpose.
First of all, hello?
Okay.
Okay. First of all, I want to say good morning.
Good morning.
Or good afternoon. And I want to say it's always an honor to come to New York for the purpose of National Action Network. A lot of people were standing with us and supporting us 10 years ago. But it is my pleasure to be here knowing that from day one, Reverend Sharpton has been there with the Trayvon Martin family and the Trayvon Martin Foundation. So I'm Sabrina Fulton. I have two sons, one in heaven, which is Trayvon Martin, and I have one here on earth, Javaris Fulton. The incident happened February 26, 2012. My son was walking from a convenience store, and I'm intentionally leaving names out. Was walking from a convenience store, and he was followed, chased, pursued, profiled by a neighborhood watch captain. My son was 17 years old. He had only been 17 for about 3 weeks. And the neighborhood watch captain was 28 years old with a loaded gun. The most impactful thing I heard at the trial was that that it wasn't my son yelling for help, yelling for somebody to save his life, but it was the person who was carrying a loaded gun that was 28 years old. And they said in the courtroom that it wasn't my son yelling, and I find that drastically unbelievable. My son was shot and killed, and nobody really was held accountable for it. Through Attorney Ben Crump and Darryl Parks at the time, they help explain a lot of things to us as families, and people don't know what you go through until you're going through it. Mm-hmm. And so I just thank God we did have Reverend Sharpton, we did have Parks and Crump, we did have people to educate us and support us and surround us to tell us what was going on, because it's nothing that you can expect. It's nothing that you know how to prepare for. And so I had to step out of my normal life and step into a life with, I guess, more purpose, which is to make sure that people know that our children matter as well. You can visit the Trayvon Martin Foundation. I don't want to tell you everything because I'm probably going to forget. But we have the Trayvon Martin Foundation. Every year you're invited down. If I could come to New York, you all could come to Miami, like Rev does. And we have what we call is the Trayvon Martin Remembrance Weekend every February around his birthday. So I'm putting you on notice this year for next year. And it has been 10 years, but we do a peace walk where we let the world know that our young people have a right to walk in peace without being followed, chased, pursued, profiled, or murdered. But you can visit the website is TrayvonMartinFoundation.org and see some of the things that we're doing. I'm preparing now for a Circle of Mothers. Circle of Mothers was a dream that I had, and it's about healing women, empowering women, and making sure that women go back into their communities and help other women, because it's really about us helping each other. Nobody is going to come in and help us. We have to help each other. And so I'm looking forward to the Circle of Mothers. I'm looking forward to just making sure that our women are being taken care of, because you know we are the glue that holds this country together.
Thank you, Sabrina.
Thank you.
Thank you. Give a big round of applause to the mother of Trayvon Martin, Sabrina Fulton. Next, because she has had somebody give a tune-up. And y'all, this is very emotional, and you know, there's no class for this. You know, you have to, unfortunately, be learning on the job, and she has done remarkably. I know when Marcus and us were standing in front of that courthouse in Brunswick, Georgia, Reverend Al. She spoke her truth. She never, ever mixed words, and I don't think she's going to do that this afternoon here just because she's in the big city of New York, which is a long way from Brunswick, Georgia. Miss Wanda Cooper Jones, the mother of Ahmaud Arbery.
Hi, good morning. My name is Wanda Cooper Jones. I'm the mother of Ahmaud Arbery. I want to say thank you guys for being a part of this huge event. First, I want to say thank you to Reverend Al Sharpton. He has stood beside my family and I for the fight for justice for Ahmaud.
Amen.
The day that we received the verdict, well, the guilty verdict for the killing of Ahmaud, Reverend Al Sharpton sat in the back with us and held my hand while that verdict was read. And that really, really meant a lot to me. He really stood with the family. And I just want to say thank you. Now on with the story. I'm the mother of Ahmaud. I am the mother of 3 children. I have 3 beautiful children. I have a son, Marcus, a daughter, Jasmine, and my baby boy was Ahmaud Arbery. I lost Ahmaud on February 23rd of 2020. Ahmaud decided to take a Sunday jog on a very beautiful Sunday afternoon. He was confronted by 3 cowards who chased Ahmaud for 5 minutes, and they killed Ahmaud. The day that I laid Ahmaud to rest was February 28th. And that day that I laid him to rest, I promised him that I would get him justice. I was told initially that Ahmaud was killed in the midst of doing a burglary. Through the questions, going through the police reports, I found out that Ahmaud had not committed a burglary, that Ahmaud was just jogging down the street. I knew I had to continue the fight because, again, it was South Georgia, and the odds was totally against me.
Tell it.
It took me 2 months to find counsel. I prayed, and eventually, God gave me counsel, which was Lee Merritt and Mr. Benjamin Crump. After we got counsel, we got arrest.
Amen.
And from that, the case took forward. All the glory and all the praise goes to God.
Yeah, yeah. Amen.
The case was actually closed because I want to remind you guys, it was 74 days without any arrest.
Yeah.
I just want to say thank you guys for actually standing and supporting me through the fight for justice for Ahmaud. How I have turned the pain into purpose. Is in the state of Georgia, since we lost Ahmaud, they revisited the citizens arrest law because the 3 cowards stated that they were chasing Ahmaud to arrest him because he had committed a burglary. Now in the state of Georgia, there's no citizens arrest law. Since the killing of Ahmaud, the state of Georgia has a hate crime law. So
what's the name of that law, Wanda?
They didn't name it after Ahmaud, but we do have it. I'm not sure, Ben. You got me on the spot with that.
Okay, we're going to make them name it after Ahmaud.
Yes. But I can say the state of Georgia has brought some changes since we have lost Ahmaud. since we've lost Ahmaud, I've also started the Ahmaud Arbery Foundation, which we're centering our purpose around little black boys that look like Ahmaud, to protect them and put them in environments that when they want to go for runs like Ahmaud decided to, they're safe.
Yes.
We're gonna be awarding 6 scholarships on his birthday on May 8th of this year. And I think I've talked too long, so I want to say thank you guys again.
Thank you, Wanda. Y'all, did she do good for her first time? Yeah. And it is remarkable how similar these tragedies are. Think about the similarities between Trayvon Martin and Ahmaud Arbery, 2 young black men minding their own business, being profiled by white people. And so we continue to fight these stigmas. And next you're about to hear from a young lady who, you know, it's real raw. But I think about her sitting next to Elisa Finley, Botham Jean's sister, and both Amir Locke and Botham Jean were in their own places where they had every right to be, and people busted in their houses and killed them, and then said everything was justified. And I mean, so we continue. Reverend Al and I, we talk so much about how we tear down this system. It's the system. It's not a one-off. It's not just in Georgia. This happens all across America. This system of police bias that leads to our children being killed. So I know we have 30 minutes, so they told me we got a hard stop at 1:15 for things we have to do with you, Karen. So with that, y'all please just keep her in prayer. This is so raw right now. Miss Karen Wells, the mother of Amir Locke.
Hello? Oh, okay. My name is Karen Wells. I'm the mother of Amir Ricari Locke. I'm going to try to be strong up here, but he was born on 11/11/99. And in 9 seconds, on 2/2/22, a police officer decided to take my baby's life. Amir was sleeping peacefully, soundfully on the couch, visiting his cousin's house. And they came in unannounced on a no-knock warrant, came in, and most people who have seen the video, you can tell my son was sound asleep. One of the police officers had to kick the couch twice to wake him up. He reached for his weapon. You can tell he doesn't know what's going on, who's in the house, if somebody's breaking in to hurt him or his cousin, who's in the bedroom. And he reached for the weapon, and he's no longer here. And he was a licensed gun owner. But what they failed to realize was he was a licensed 22-year-old gun owner, male, black person in the United States of America. And with no criminal background. They paid 200 searches on my baby to find something, and to this day, they couldn't find nothing. He was raised with morals and values. He was not a criminal, and even if he was, so what? You broke into his dwelling.
Yeah.
That was a break-in for property, not a person. He wasn't on the search warrant. It was for property that had nothing to do with my baby. And he's not here. Imagine going shopping with my sister, who's my support, to go pick out a suit for a 22-year-old and take it to a funeral home. Imagine going to go and view the body of your baby, and they wouldn't even let us see him at the medical examiner's office. We had to wait until they sent him over to the funeral home. I am angry. I am mad. I am disgusted with Minneapolis, Minnesota. This country is still a disappointment in 2022. We have rights. We vote. We carry legal firearms, and y'all still think that we don't matter. Amir is more than a hashtag. We're going to continue the fight for the no-knock warrant bans in honor of his name, for Breonna Taylor. This cannot happen to nobody else. You can't sit in your apartment and eat ice cream. You can't sleep on a couch, a floor, in your own bed. It's so much that I don't know sometimes if I'm coming or going. I watch all these mothers, and I have a picture of Amir at Trayvon Martin's first protest in the Twin Cities. That is the first one that he ever attended. And it moved my children at that time. He has a 24-year-old brother. And it made Amir also want to help and change the world and save the youth. But even though he's not here in the flesh, where they messed up, is my baby was very spiritual. He was higher than this world. He had a purpose on his life, and he is going to work where you cannot see him work. So we're not going to stop. I'm not going to be disappointed with anything that happens with the police officers or whatever, because at the end of the day, when you pass this earth and go where it's hot at, because you're not going where my baby's at, you're going to see his face. You're going to see his face. Wow. So I come from Omaha, Nebraska, where Malcolm X comes from.
Amen.
So, like I told them before, y'all open up the doors. And like he said, with the infamous words, the chickens are coming home to roost. Minneapolis, the United States should be prepared for all the chickens coming home to roost. You get ready. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. Y'all put me in a fraternity with mothers and loved ones of innocent. They was doing nothing wrong. Nobody on this panel, anybody that you hear of, did anything wrong. The only thing they did wrong was they had melanin. They had that melanin that is so intimidated, but you're really not intimidated. You want that melanin, but you can't have it, so you're gonna take it. So you're gonna take it. Y'all gonna, but I'm here for Amir, and I'm going to fight until my last breath. I'm gonna do everything for my baby, and I'm gonna make sure that I continue to speak for the women, the mothers that did not speak up, the different murders that's going on right now that y'all didn't hear about. Well, guess what? Y'all messed up. You got a panel of women. We not about to play. We coming because y'all came for our kids.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Y'all keep praying for her as we make it through the day. I'm sure you're going to be seeing a lot of her today. And I'll say this before we bring Alyssa up. Reverend Al, you know what she said is all true. They did all those searches trying to get some dirt on him. And the no-knock warrant, they had a warrant that a judge signed, because it's not just the police. He signed a warrant for them to go in 4 different apartments. And her son just happened to be in one of them. I can't tell you how unconstitutional that is, how it violates the 4th Amendment right against unlawful searches and seizures. But I guess when you black, like Breonna, they just sign any no-knock warrant. Karen, we with you. Alyssa Finley, the sister of Botham Jean.
Good afternoon. My name is Alyssa Finley. I am the sister of Botham Jean. I listened to Karen and Amir's story, and it's so similar to Botham. September 6th, 2018, I look at it as the last day I spoke to Botham. He went home after work into his apartment. It was the first day of the first game of the NFL season, and he had plans to go out with his friend Kevin to watch the game at a sports bar, and me being the big sister, I said, why you have to go out? Stay home. You're safer at home. And I spoke to him until he got into his apartment. And a few hours later, I got a call from Baylor University Hospital asking me to identify my brother over the phone. Amber Geiger, a white female police officer who lived directly below him, got off on the wrong floor, entered his apartment, and shot him through the heart. We since then received a murder conviction. She was only sentenced to 10 years. I know. So we're still fighting. I want federal charges brought against her because she did violate his civil rights. And just like Karen and just like all these strong black women on this panel, they picked the wrong one. Because, and Ben should know.
Lord, I know.
I don't play when it comes to my family. I have 2 brothers, one on earth, one in heaven, and I am my brother's keeper.
Amen.
So, how I turned my pain into purpose, I started the Botham Jean Foundation, simply to continue the work that Botham started, because in his short 26 years on earth, he did so much work for vulnerable communities, for the vulnerable youth, for seniors, so we're continuing his work. I also started the Sisters of the Movement, which is a coalition of sisters of police brutality victims, because I needed a support system. I needed someone that I can call and scream and just go off and who would know exactly what I'm going through as a big sister. And I go hard because
yes, she does.
When you lose someone so close to you, there is so much loud silence. There is a void in your heart, and it hurts. And you have all this energy, and you need to do something with it. So I decide to be productive with all this energy, and I advocate for police reform, and I advocate for all these victims, and I want to see change because I'm raising 3 black boys here in New York, and I do not ever want to get a call from a hospital again asking me to identify another family member of mine over the phone.
My Lord.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alyssa, for your tenacity. Next, we have the sister of George Floyd, who, in her own way, continues to carry his legacy forward to the world, Miss Bridget Floyd.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bridget Floyd, George Floyd's baby sister. This is very, very fresh for me and my family. As I sit here today listening to these stories of these victims that had did anything, it gets harder and it gets harder and it gets harder. As y'all call him George, I call him Floyd. A strong man of God. Just trying to make it. I'm not going to say too much because it still hurts. But the thing that keeps me going these last 6 months because I'm still a little lost. Because I've never felt this type of pain before. But with God's grace and mercy, I will get through it. But there's a song that I have sung in my head these last 6 months over and over and over. And it says, I'm just a nobody trying to tell everybody about somebody that can save anybody. I'll do whatever it takes for them to remember George Floyd Jr.
Thank you. Thank you, Bridget. Thank you very much, Bridget, for bearing your heart. Now, a woman who has always been here, and I love how every Saturday she's at the House of Justice, standing in the gap for all the mothers. One of the original mothers of the movement, Miss Gwen Carr, the mother of Eric Garner.
Yes. Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so pleased to be here this morning, and I'm so proud to be represented and being on this panel of this morning. And I want to thank Reverend Sharpton and the whole NAN family for always embracing me from day one. I want to thank Attorney Ben Crump. We have been close friends since this has happened to my son. And they were always there to guide my footsteps, to guide my way. Every Saturday I go to NAN because it's always a history lesson. It's always guidance. It's always something to do. And you never know who you might see there. So I am so proud to be part of that family.
Yes, ma'am.
And as you know, my son, Eric Garner, was murdered in 2014 on July the 17th, a day that I will never forget. You know, when your loved one is murdered, that day you can play it back minute for minute all day long, and you have to live it every day. But you know, when those police officers, when they choked my son out, pounced on him and put his head to that hot ground, and after I collected myself, after I found out what had happened, and after I cried until I couldn't cry no more, after I went to my bed and said I was going to go to sleep until this terrible nightmare was over. But you know, it didn't happen. At least with a nightmare, you wake up. But I never woke up. It's still happening.
My Lord.
And you know, I says, you know, I can't stay in this bed forever. You know, after when my son, when we had his funeral, a lot of people think the worst day of your life is when you lose your child. No, the worst day of your life is when you go to the cemetery and know he's not going to walk out there with you. That's the worst day of your life. And then when I have to go to the funeral with all my family, my grandkids and my grandsons, I dressed my grandsons to look like their father that day. I wanted them to have on the same suit, the same tie that he had on. And you know, I could remember that day just like in infamy. And I just say, you know what? I'm not just going to sit here and mourn anymore. I'm going to turn my mourning into a movement.
Yes.
I'm going to turn my sorrow into strategy. And you know, I'm not just going to sit in the corner. That's what we mothers are not doing that anymore. Yes, we're going to bury our children and then we're going to get to work. We're going to work on these laws. We're going to work on getting our children free from being profiled.
Amen.
And another thing, they said my son was selling cigarettes that day. He wasn't selling, I'm not saying he didn't sell cigarettes, but he wasn't selling cigarettes at the time when they was profiling him. He had just broke up a fight. But it's still saying he was selling cigarettes. No, that did not happen that day. This is how the media, they assassinate your child twice. They assassinate him, his body, and then his reputation. And this is why us as mothers, we have to stand up. We have to tell the story because nobody can tell the story like you can tell them. He laid under your heartbeat. You was the vessel who carried him for 9 months. So you know your child. And, you know, I just want to say now, and as I speak about the cigarettes, I want to talk about how they're trying to ban the menthol cigarettes. Now, I'm not a smoker, never been a smoker. But I say, why ban the menthol smokers? That would cause them these crimes against the black community all over again. Yeah. And as Attorney Crump said, how would they know what kind of cigarette you're smoking? They'll just walk up on you and they'll put a menthol on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I ask all of you, when it comes to voting or when it comes to standing up, do not vote against the menthol cigarettes. If you're going to vote for anything, let's vote for banning all the cigarettes.
Amen. Not just black people.
Not just what the black people smoke. I mean, all these unintended consequences will come up, and it will only hurt the black community because they're not going in Marlboro country. Okay? You better believe that. So let's stick together on that. And I just think, you know, even though my son, you know, he's gone, I can't do anything about that but try to change laws, which I did. We got the anti-chokehold, the Eric Garner anti-chokehold law, and we're going to continue to fight. They did not give us any justice with the grand jury. They didn't give us justice with the justice, and we fought for 6 years and we was waiting for answers, and we never got the right answers. But you know, I told all of them, you killed the wrong mother's son because I'm still going to fight with every living breath in my body. And that's why this year, and I can't see the young children keep falling through the cracks. That's why we're having a fundraising gala this year that's going to help the young people. We want to give scholarships, but not to, we always hear about giving scholarships to these bright children. No, we want to give scholarships to the underachieved. We want to give them encouragement.
Thank you, Gwen.
And this is what we have to do. These young people are our future. And we have to stop losing them. We have to save them. We have to embrace them. And this is what our foundation is doing. And this gala this year, we're hoping to raise enough money to support every young child who needs it.
Amen.
And I just thank you all for always supporting me, always being there for me, and I will be there for you. And thank you, Reverend Sharpton, for guiding my footsteps from day one to day now and then forever. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Gwen Carr. Thank you. Thank you. And as we prepare to hear from the final family member, I think what Gwen Carr said is so important because it's almost as if they say, if our children isn't perfect, then they're not worthy of your consideration.
Right.
Well, how many of their children perfect? And they don't shoot and kill and choke them. And I think about the people who suffer from mental health crisis, something that we don't talk often enough about. Reverend Al talked about Deacon Sutherland and Amy Sutherland, the parents of James Sutherland in Charleston, South Carolina. Like George Floyd and Eric Garner, he said, I can't breathe after he was handcuffed inside the jail, tased 11 times within 46 seconds, knee on his neck, and put spit on, just crazy stuff but yet they say the officers did nothing wrong. So I want you to know, Deacon Sutherland, Amy Sutherland, we coming to Charleston, South Carolina, because we saw the video.
Yes.
And finally, Jakari is going to give affirmations, and we won't be able to take questions because we understand we got to deal with this breaking news on Amir. But we're going to hear from a young man who, I mean, has really come into his own after the tragic killing of his brother. Everybody keeps saying, Reverend Al, when he gonna run for Congress? So yeah, I'll give it up for the future Congressman Philonise Floyd to tell you about how he transferred his pain into purpose.
How y'all doing out there? It's a blessing to be here in New York. Praise God for everything.
Amen.
My brother George was 46 years young when he was murdered by 4 officers in Minneapolis. The tragedy that every mom, every person all over the world has seen has driven everybody down to their feet when they seen that video that was viewed over 2 billion times. The fact that the world had to get behind my brother just for him to be able to get some kind of accountability. And that's one of the biggest reasons that I turned my pain into purpose. I started my foundation, which is the PACFIS, Philonise and Keita Floyd Institution for Social Change. And it's not just to speak up for what happened to my brother, but to talk and speak up for all these grieving families that's up here on the stage. You have so many people around the world who are going through this, people who don't get the spotlight on them. Everybody in here had a camera on them, and they were able to talk about the incident that was going on in the society of today. The fact that I had to travel to South Carolina to speak about Mr. Sutherland, who was in custody when he was murdered by police officers. The fact that I had to go into Minnesota and speak up for Amir Locke. My brother died 2 years ago. This stuff should have been changed. A video for over 9 minutes, and we still don't get any type of justice, accountability. They still haven't passed the George Floyd Policing Act.
That's right.
400 years of oppression, the greatest crime in history. And they're still holding us down right now. Like Reverend Al Sharpton says all the time, they still got their knee on our neck.
Amen.
Bottom line, I'm here to tell everybody in here, Ahmaud Arbery was the charcoal, Breonna Taylor was the lighter fluid, and George Floyd was the flame that set the world on fire.
Wow.
I know I don't have long, but I just want everybody to know I sat multiple hours, spent a lot of time talking to Biden, talking to Kamala, had Benjamin Lloyd Crump there with us, spoke to Reverend Al Sharpton, had Miss Gwen Carr, had Botham Jean's sister. Everybody, we were there speaking because we want to speak up for what is right, because we're tired of our rights being violated.
We got to keep fighting.
So I need everybody to know and just remember this. We going to stand up for what is right at all times. And if they can make federal laws to protect the bird, which is the bald eagle, then they can make federal laws to protect people of color.
Exactly. 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 And finally, Jakari Harris, he's going to give us the affirmation. Then I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Al Sharpton, my co-counsel.
Thank you, Attorney Crump. Can you all hear me? Yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jakari Harris. I serve as the Executive Director of the George Floyd Memorial Foundation. These family members have showed you all how they've shown up so many times, year after year after year. And I want to encourage you all to continue showing up. Show up when you feel like giving up, and showing up when you feel like all things is lost. And I was going to speak about other things, but something came across me, and I wanted to give some affirmations on today, because I feel sometimes that we get so overwhelmed with the media, with the news, with our life, we don't know what's going on. So if I can have everyone to please quickly stand up with me. We're going to give some affirmations, so can you stand up for me? All right, if you all can please stand up, and y'all ready? I woke up this morning. In my greatness. I own my light. I own my future. I am the change. I am bold. I am strong. I am courageous. I am perfect in my imperfections. I am perfect in my imperfections. I am the change. I am the change. I am strong enough. I am old enough. I am young enough. I am wise enough. Now breathe. Now let it out. And repeat after me. I accept that I cannot change the past. But what I can do is work towards a future for all. I commit to hold fear in one hand. Y'all not holding your hands up. I commit to hold fear in one hand and passion in the other. And leap. I ask that each of you, don't look at me, look at your neighbors, that each of you hold me accountable to my contributions on this planet. Thank you.
Give Jakari a big hand. All right. Let me say, have a seat. We're going to give you a break in 5 minutes. I want to thank the parents of Jamal Sutherland, Charleston, South Carolina. I see Najee Ali, who was with us, and we started and helped lead that whole movement around the Oscars. And we got the first black to produce the Oscars in history. Everybody talking about Will Smith slapping somebody. Let's talk about how the marching we did helped lead to Will Packard being the producer for the first time. And this brother put out himself there. We went out and marched, and Reverend Toulis and all of us, but Najee put it out there. As we get ready, we're going to give you a 45-minute break so you get a sandwich. Or since we downtown, you get a sandwich. Don't go in the stores for a sandwich. They don't know what you're talking about downtown. And then we coming back 2:15. We've got all of the controllers coming. We want to talk about how they need to invest their money in our community. This is our taxpayer dollar. I want everybody to be back for that, and then get ready again for the dinner tonight. So everybody that didn't have a ticket, go to the counter, get one. I'll check in. You do not have to have a tuxedo to come tonight. This is a people's movement. And one of the reasons I wanted to start this morning with this panel about voting and criminal justice, this is what NAN is all about. Many of the families will tell you when we get involved, I tell them that, look, we don't want nothing from you. I don't care if you get $1 zillion settlement. I don't want a dime. Many of them, we lay out money for the funerals. I don't want that back. I don't want people hustling. Some of y'all go get a GoFundMe page on somebody you ain't never met. That's why I support these family foundations. But I want you to know it's international. To close us out, and we're going to the press conference and the sandwich. Just what? Go ahead.
you know, we have to give our heroes our flowers while they're still here. And I just want to say to Reverend Al Sharpton, the president and founder of National Action Network, thank National Action Network for being the union for our families when nobody else is there. Reverend Al and National Action Network is our union. The police got their union, we got our union.
Thank you. And we're going to stay doing that. And let me tell you something. Working with this is the great honor for us. And let me say this as I bring the closing person to just give a few minutes, is that I love what they said about none of us. I love what his affirmation about perfect in our imperfections. Because many of our families don't get along. And I keep telling families, I come in and they be arguing, I tell them, wait a minute, I grew up, I've been black 3 times. I was a black baby, then I became black boy, now I'm a black man. And I know how black families are because I had one. I got cousins that better not show up to the convention. But it's being able to work with us that we understand each other. That's why I don't get no sides of family, because y'all don't get on no sides of mine. But we all are for justice. And we all know the blood that binds us is thicker than the waters that divide us. We need to stay together. Amen. 21 years ago, they killed a young man in London, England. 1991, I'm sorry, 30 years ago, the year we started NAN. And his name was Roland Adams. And they asked me, would I come to London and lead a march? And I went to London, England, and led that march. And this week, I met with a delegation from the United Kingdom, and they are working. One of the aunts, Bridget, of Roland Adams, is now a member of the House of Lords. She turned her pain into power. And they let one of their delegation to give word to us, let you know this is not just a battle here, but even in England, they're battling against brutality and against racism. I'm glad also our new member of the board, former borough president of the Bronx, he's joined our national board, Ruben Diaz. I'm glad that Ruben is on our board. He'll be highlighted tonight. But I wanted to give us closing remarks, Belle Ribio Adi, who's a Labour member of the UK Parliament of Streatham. Will she come and give a few words from England?
Thank you all very much, and a good afternoon to you all. Oh, you can't hear me? Is this better? Much better, okay. So I bring you greetings from the United Kingdom, and most specifically my constituency, which is in South London and one of the most diverse areas in the country. In 2019, I actually became jointly one of the first women of Ghanaian heritage to be elected to UK Parliament. I'm still one of only 14 black women in Parliament. And one of only 20 black people in Parliament overall out of 650. So at our rate of growth, it would take 100 years to reach our comparative levels in society. So we've got a lot of work to do. And it's a real honor to speak at this conference today and to be part of the Black Soxton Society of Black Lawyers delegation, which came here to look at drug reform and racial economic justice. Now, our shared struggle against racism and oppression should never be underestimated, because it's come in many, many different forms and, of course, in different locations around the world, but is born from exactly the same hatred. And every major struggle that I can think of that black people have faced globally, be it slavery, colonialism, apartheid, there's always been some element of international solidarity in bringing it to an end. And, you know, they didn't have iPhones, no one was live streaming anything, but they were there, you know, they transcended place, time, and circumstances, and they won. And so it's so important that we have that international solidarity today. So whilst we've been here, we've met with so many different people, from the Democratic Socialists of America to my counterparts in the Congressional Black Caucus, to the National Bar Association and the NFL. And now I find myself here, and I'm pleased to see from the outside, looking in, activism is alive and well in the United States. And one of the things I wanted to begin with doing is actually telling you that Black Britain salutes you, African Americans in this country, for coming out in unprecedented numbers and voting to rid the world of the racist megalomaniac that was Donald Trump. Absolutely. I mean, you did that. All credit to you. You did yourselves a favor, but you have to know that you did the rest of the world a favor too. But the fight back can't stop there, because there seems to be some sort of obsession with electing men just like that all around the world. In the UK, we have our own baby Trump. His name is Boris Johnson. Now, Trump is an extreme free market, right-wing libertarian, and Boris Johnson isn't far off. He's classically educated and has better airs and graces, but that makes him actually more sinister and even more dangerous. And the damage that man has already caused in our country is unprecedented. He's a constitutional vandal. He's responsible for the largest increase in inflation, food and fuel poverty, and racial inequality that we've ever seen in modern Britain. And while the country was suffering throughout the pandemic with a level of corruption that $4 billion in fraud. Now, this is in a country where energy prices have tripled for the average person, where they've given tax breaks to the richest and are taxing the poorest more, and where working people are using food banks. And the situation has got so bad. We heard of a case recently of a 14-year-old collapsing in a food bank because he hadn't eaten for so long. And it's a working people. And food banks asking the shops not to send them hard potatoes, just the instant potatoes, because people can't afford the energy to cook the potatoes. All of this in the 6th largest economy in the world. Now, in response to an institutionally racist police force, what they've actually done is change the law to grant immunity to police and armed forces in our country, even if they commit crimes like torture and rape and murder. They're going to curb, through a policing crime sentencing and courts bill, the right to protest, voter suppression, straight out of Trump's playbook, and we know exactly who it is going to affect in these communities. Now, what my government is doing is making itself less accountable and less open to challenge in the domestic courts, and in response, what will now happen if you go and protest these actions is that you could face up to 10 years in prison. And quite specifically, this was in response to what happened in the UK, because we had protests following the murder of George Floyd, and we saw people dragging down the statues of slavers and throwing them into the river. And what they've said in response to that is that now you can get 10 years in jail, and that is more than you will get if you rape a woman in the United Kingdom at the moment. Now, we know, just as it is in the US, that drugs legislation is used to crack down on our communities, and I'm really pleased to see the reforms that have happened here. Recently, we had a case where a young girl, 15 years old, in school, her teacher called the police into school because they said they could smell marijuana on her. They allowed 2 police women to take her into a room alone. They did not inform her parents. She was on her period. She was menstruating at the time. They searched her. They made her remove her sanitary towel. They made her bend over, part her butt cheeks and cough, do all of that just to find a blunt, and they found absolutely nothing. Then they sent her back into an exam like that. This girl is now traumatized. And the police have not faced any consequences for their actions. They remain on desk duty. Only recently, the teacher who allowed her to go into that room alone has been sacked. But we found out that since then, for every 5 children have been strip searched every day for the past 3 years in the UK, and about 20 of them were under the age of 12 years old. I do not know what they were looking for amongst these children. Now, in the same vein, you know, black youth unemployment and incarceration rates have doubled. Black women are dying in pregnancy and childbirth. We know that it's the same figures as it is here, 4 times more likely to die in pregnancy and childbirth. But what we have been told on a government level is, yes, that is very bad, but the figures are not high enough to constitute having a target to end those levels. And race hate crime is through the roof. Now, the teaching of Black History Month, even that they want to come up against. And they've said to us that what they're going to do is, the teaching of Black history and this critical race theory is racist. We need to tell a new narrative about the transatlantic slave trade, as if the transatlantic slave trade was some sort of pleasure cruise, and we have some shared identity. But we know exactly what happens, because when the going gets tough, the first thing that is to go is our rights. The first thing to go is our equality, and the first group of people that are expendable are Black people. Now, I say all these things, and some people may say I've come to just diss my country, and that, I hear this all the time, I'm not a patriot. But what I would say is, what greater love could you have for your country, and I love my country, than to want to make it better for every single person that lives in it. And that's every single person, regardless of their race, their gender, their sexuality, all of those things. But I know what people say when they say that I don't love my country. When women were arguing for suffrage, no one said they didn't. When trade unionists were arguing for better rights, no one was saying they didn't love their country. What they're saying is that somebody that looks like me does not belong there. And that's the type of rhetoric that we get all the time, but I am going to continue saying what I say and doing what I do and being Black whilst I'm doing it, and reminding everybody that I am British and I have every single right to not only criticize my country, but come to the US and ask for help. Now, I had the pleasure of meeting Congresswoman Joyce Beatty, who's the chair of the Congressional Black Caucus, and I know you'll be hearing from her later in the conference. And it was amazing. She went around the room. There are Congress people there, Congressman Hakeem Jeffries and other members of the caucus, and she celebrated them. And I think that's so important, because it's so important to celebrate ourselves, because nobody else is going to do that. But even more so, she explained the history of the Congressional Black Caucus. She explained that the reason why they called it the Congressional Black Caucus and not the Congressional African American Caucus is because they understood that one day there would be a call upon them to act more than just for African Americans in this country. And I thought that was a beautiful thing. Now, they understood the assignment. And so we have requested from there, now that African Americans have saved America, they need to come and reach out that hand across the sea and see what they can do for us. Now, following the monumental act of self-harm, which some of you may know as Brexit, that our country has done to itself, the UK is going to be looking for trade deals. They're going to be looking for trade deals, and one of the major people they're going to be looking from is the US. Now, Lee Jasper, the former mayoral advisor, now part of Black Socks, which is a social movement that we came on the delegation with, points to a history where the Irish American Caucus actually lobbied Bill Clinton to ensure ethnic inequalities and the oppression of Catholics was addressed in the Good Friday Agreement. And the result was affirmative action for Catholics and a huge reduction in violence and peace in Northern Ireland. And obviously that was a great thing. And President Biden has continued in that vein and saying that he will not enter a trade deal in the UK if the Good Friday Agreement is affected. And we're pleased to see this. And with the rollback in racial equality in the UK, what we are asking your support for is that when the US comes to making a trade deal with the UK, that you turn around to our government and you say you are not going to do it unless they begin treating Black people in our country with the rights that they deserve. And you have every single right to do that. Now, what we also find is that all of the gains that you have made here in terms of making companies address racial inequality, as soon as they get to JFK Airport, they leave it at the door. And they come to the UK and they continue with their disgraceful practices as usual, and that has to change. And what I would say is some people say, what does it have to do with us? We've got our own problems here. Yes, you have your own problems here, and yes, we have our own problems there. But what I would say is that even if the argument of morality does not move you, then I would answer the argument of self-interest did, because if we don't end racism everywhere, we are not going to end racism anywhere. And if the powers that be do not respect Black people abroad, they are never going to respect Black people at home. And that's one of the reasons why I've myself formed the all-party parliamentary group on African reparations in the UK. It has caused quite a stir. We are asking for reparations to be paid to all people of African descent. And I think the place that we need to the place that we need to start with is understanding that there is no way that we can fully account for the horror that was the transatlantic slave trade. But we must look into certain things. So, for example, we have a situation where you're already in the US looking at reparations in different cities in terms of housing, educational reparations, environmental reparations, all of those things need to start with. And we are also trying to get the British Museum, which is the largest collection of stolen goods in the world, to give back some of their artifacts to people right across the globe. So I'll just end by saying this, and thank you for allowing me to take your time. That I remember I once heard Reverend Sharpton speak when I was about 19 or 20 in London, some years ago. And I remember he told a story of a young man who came to him and said, "Why do I need a movement? I went to the best school, I got into the best fraternity, I got the best jobs, and there was no racial justice movement that helped me achieve that. I did it all by myself." And the Reverend reminded him that if it wasn't for the racial justice movement, the university he went to would not have been segregated, the job that he went to would not have allowed him in. So all I would ask is that we never forget our movements, and that we never forget that the fight is not won until we all win. Thank you.
Isn't that wonderful? All the way. Let me thank the panel. Y'all could see how, you could see, Sabrina, how surprised I was when I got off the plane in London and they said, "No justice, no peace, old chop." All right, let's take 45 minutes back in this room, get into economic justice in 45 minutes.